Good evening. This is the October 7th meeting of the DG&R Committee, Subcommittee to Holyoke City Council. Peter Tallman, Mike Sullivan, I'm the chairman, Terry Murphy, Joe McGivern is with us. Thank you all for being here, really appreciate it. And we don't have prior meeting minutes available, so I'll take a motion to remove number 2 from the table and to reopen the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
So this is a special permit application of Frank DeMarinis for a single-family home in the Floodplain Overlay District on Northampton Street. Turns out it's actually Mount Tom Greenhouse Road, which I just found that out when I was going by there last week. And this is a continuation of a public hearing from September 9th. So at that public hearing, nice if I have my notes, but I do have them. At that public hearing, we have Mr. Showalter, the engineer of Stage Engineering of Westfield. The applicant was unable to attend, and we went through we talked about the floodplain, and that seemed like that was going to be okay, but we did continue this public hearing for further instructions from department heads, and lo and behold, we got further comments from department heads, and they weren't great. They were not great, if I may just summarize it. I did happen to go visit the site. I don't remember what the date was, but it was a few days afterwards, and I saw the clear cutting that was done there. And let me just see what the department heads had to say. So let's see. I got a letter from the. And we'll make a motion to accept. Actually, I'm going to say, I'm going to put a motion for. I assume that the committee got the September 20th letter from the building commissioner.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So.
Email or whatever.
Well, it may have been an email, but it's a letter dated September 20th, and so this is. Dated September 20th, signed by the building commissioner, who is here tonight, in response to a complaint made to the Department of Codes and Inspections, and his inspection was completed on September 20th. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'm going to paraphrase it. An inspection of the property was made for work commencing before a building permit was issued. So let's see, violation of the city pursuant to section 9.2. Hold on a second, I better step back. At 11:30 a.m., it was found that multiple pieces of heavy equipment were working on site. It was previously found on September 11th the land had been cleared. On September 11th, an email was sent stating that the work on the land to clear the vegetation is not permissible until a building permit is issued. On the same day, we spoke in length on the phone about this activity being prohibited in the floodplain until a building permit is issued, as a building permit also functions as, Mr. Cody, why don't you come in for a second, or at least go up to the microphone, because we'll have a couple of questions. And Mr. Cody cites 44 CFR 59, and he says in his letter, you are hereby put on notice under section 115 of the Mass State Building Code and 9.1.4 of the City of Holyoke zoning ordinance, a stop order has been issued for the above referenced property. Now, this is letter 1. We'll just do it in sequential order. We'll get to the we'll get to the Conservation Commissioner in a second. Mr. Cody, thank you for being here as always. What's happening with this as of? So I see your letter September 20th. What do you have for updates at this point?
So I was asked by the planning department and the conservation director to look into this matter because they were alleging that the work was beginning before the special permit's issued, before the building permit. So I looked into it, and it's a standard letter, just a notice that to stop work. And then if you don't, there's a consequence. And my phone was ringing off the hook, so I stopped by, and that's it. Sent a letter saying you're in violation of the order to stop.
Okay, so that
Straightforward.
was September, that date I just mentioned. What's happened since that date?
Are you referring to the email or or a letter?
Well,
I think an email, right?
Um,
I'm not aware of anything that's happened since that date.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have your email. I don't really save emails, but I do have your letter dated September 20th. And so I guess the main question, has a building permit been issued?
Well, it can't because first we have to get a special permit through for the development of the floodplain.
Okay, so I didn't realize, okay, that wasn't,
Yep.
okay, that's not clear in here. Okay, so,
Yeah, there's a lot of steps in the process in the floodplain.
oh, gotcha, all right, so they need a special permit for this, for the floodplain from us, and then you would consider the building permit application.
Right, so the building permit is sort of captures everything under the umbrella with the conservation, planning department if applicable. So if somebody has to get a special permit to the planning department or city council, the floodplain regulations, everything needs to be complete before the building permit can be issued. And there's a lot of things before the building permit in this case.
Okay, so you're in a holding pattern until we move.
Yep, exactly, is one of the bodies.
Okay, all right. Actually, I do have your email. Sorry about that. I did save it. Oh, okay, but it doesn't really expand. Oh, all right, so I think the letter's the main event. Is Mr., I don't see him here. No, Mr. Smith is not here. Okay, let's see. I hope I have it. Bad if I don't have it. Okay, this is dated September 13th, and this is signed by Mr. Smith, and I know that the applicant's engineer is here, so he can give us an update, but this says Dear Mr. DeMarinis, the Holyoke Conservation Commission observed and documented the presence of work that was not in compliance with the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Holyoke Wetlands Ordinance. Based upon field observation and multiple eyewitness accounts, the following conditions were violated as a result of a decision to initiate work on this parcel. And the building commissioner lists several items. I don't see the building commissioner here, but let's see. So, but he goes on to, the building commissioner goes on to say the Conservation Commissioner is hereby issuing a fine for violating the approved permit for this parcel. Based upon the Wetlands Ordinance, the appropriate fine for the number of violations is $3,150. You are hereby issued these fines. An enforcement order has been issued under the Wetlands Protection Act. Under the provisions of this enforcement order, you are hereby ordered to cease work, prepare a plan of corrective action, and submit a restoration plan for work, any and all work, that does not comply with the order conditions by October 10th, 2019. Failure to comply with enforcement order may result in the revocation of DEP 186, et cetera, per general condition 1 of the permit, which states failure to comply with all conditions stated herein and without related statutes and other regulatory measures shall be deemed cause to revoke or modify this order. A notice of violation is attached. Let's see. And I guess I have the violation attached. So I'm not seeing Mr. Smith here. Are you Mr.? I'm Mr. DeMarinis. You're Mr. DeMarinis, okay. All right, so, and I know your advocacy, Mr. Showalter? Okay. All right, so Mr. DeMarinis and Mr. Showalter are here. So that's where this is. We are in a public hearing, so, before I forget, you were supposed to remind me, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Valentin expressed her regrets, but she's unable to attend tonight. But one job. It's all right. That's okay. Mr. DeMarinis, if you want to come up to step up the microphone. I don't see any department heads here, and we'll hear from you as the petitioner. And we'll take it from there, I guess. Yes, if you try that, if you're comfortable there.
Do we have one on the side or?
Yeah.
There you go.
Hello? Okay. My name is Frank DeMarinis. I own Sage Engineering. I'm a professional engineer, civil. I'm here with Luke Showalter. Can I give you a little history so it's not so unclear? It seems like everything that's going on. In general, this parcel that I purchased in April 28th of 1992, there was a subdivision on it that was approved by the planning board in the city for 3 residential houses. Since then, that expired. It never was built. An order of conditions was issued on May 22nd of 2001 for those 3 houses. On October 10th, 2017, I purchased the land. My intention was to have a pasture, to have 1 or 2 cows in it, and 1 residential house was to eliminate the subdivision. On October 11th, 2018, I filed a notice of intent, or Luke filed a notice of intent to develop 1 residential house and a yard, a pasture with it for a couple cows. That was a year ago, almost. On January 22nd, 2019, the Massachusetts Department, DEP, approved the project and issued a file number. On January 28th, 2019, Natural Heritage approved the project, the development of a 1 house and a pasture, with positive findings. On April 25th, 2019, the Conservation Commission, the Holyoke Conservation Commission, approved the project with conditions, with an order of conditions. On June 11th, 2019, I filed with City Council for special permit for the development of 1 residential house and a pasture. On July 2019, City Council refers it to subcommittee, to you folks. On this parcel, I'm going to try to clarify. This parcel that I own, it's about 10 acres in size, and there's 2 other DEP file numbers on this parcel. Those 2 file numbers, one of them is for the access drive to cross my land and provide fire protection to the solar field. The solar field abuts my property to the north, okay? And I believe the other DEP file numbers also associated with them, but their main development. So there's 2 DEP file numbers, but ultimately the way I understand, I don't know what the other ones were, but one of them is definitely for the work that's on my property to put the roadway to the solar farm and a turnaround for a fire truck to get out of there, okay? I have a DEP file number, right, for the development of my pasture and for that 1 house. So we marked on the property the 3 DEP file numbers. We contacted Andrew Smith, and we said we need to have a pre-construction meeting for all 3 files, because I'm also the general contractor building the roadway for the power plant, okay? Andrew went back and forth with the project engineer saying, well, you need to have this done for the special permit. You don't have a building permit. We said, well, at this time, we just want to put the pasture in, because I live, a golf shot away. I currently live in Holyoke at 30 Old Ferry Road, right on the other side of the canoe club. So at a minimum, I wanted to have the pasture in there. The project engineer read through the ordinance, realized we could still be be in total compliance with the special permit or the overlay of the floodplain, because we weren't grading anything, we were just cutting the trees, which is allowed in the zoning. We expressed to Andrew that we're just building the pasture at this time. We're not starting the work for a house. We didn't dig any foundations, we didn't do any earth moving, nothing of that nature. We never heard anything back from Andrew. We then had the on-site meeting with Andrew to inspect the silt fence and everything. He approved everything. So we started cutting the trees down. Now, there's clearly a miscommunication with Andrew and myself, because I was under the impression we had the pre-construction meeting and we were all authorized to be able to cut the trees down. So he got very angry with me, screamed and yelled over the phone. I expressed this to Damien that this happened. I went to the mayor's office and expressed my concern about it, to be treated this way over a very simple miscommunication. And to this day, I'm not in any violation of anything with the Conservation Commission. I have no problem meeting with them, speaking with them. I'm a little concerned that through this whole process to build one house, I've been kind of put through the ringer with everything. But I understand the law. I've been following it. I'll continue to follow it. I'm here in front of you to obtain a special permit to work in overlay district. We have the engineer of record here that can explain anything. When we do file for we haven't filed for a building permit at this time, or we did and it was rejected, saying you need to get special permit, which I understood, and I said, okay, let's go get special permit from city council. And we're here today. I have no problem going over in grave detail the application, but in general, it's a single-family house. There is an island on the property that is above the floodplain. We wanted to do some grading, so we provided compensatory storage in compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act. Hence, the Conservation Commission did approve it based on those plans, and those plans are here in front of you. And there is some scuttlebutt that if the house is bigger than 55,000, if the house is larger than 5,000 square feet, you must obtain special site plan approval. So I made the house smaller than 5,000 square feet. There's probably a slight disagreement with me and maybe the planning agent that the house and the garage has to be below 5,000 square feet. I reviewed over the ordinance, so did the engineer, and it clearly states that the garage doesn't count towards the square footage. So we made the house under 5,000 square feet. But we would reduce the size of it anyway, so we don't have to go through the exercise for site plan approval with the planning board. It's just a residential house. So I know you're not happy with me because there's enforcement orders and fines. I can see it. I apologize for the miscommunications or the breakdown of communications. I try to stay in complete compliance with everything. I permitted over 300 different projects throughout my years. I'm very upset that this has happened right now. I don't know what else to say. But I honestly feel like I haven't done anything wrong, and I am appealing the fines.
Yeah, Dave had excused himself and he's asked me to chair the meeting. So, is that all? Do you have anything further you'd like to add at this point?
If you want to see the site plan, I have it in colors. This is Route 5. This is the road that goes to my, and then this right here is the access road that goes, the proposed access road. This right here is the development. A gravel pad here. Oh.
Take the mic off. You're okay to do that, but just take the mic off the, turn it off for a second.
Thank you. To just quickly, this is the access road to the power plant. This would be my future driveway. At this time, we're just gonna have a gravel pad, and the compensatory storage is right here. And this is the house with the garage with one single-family house, the septic system, and then the well is over here. And then this is undisturbed, the 200 feet adjacent to the river for riverfront protection.
Keep going, yeah.
So, could you say exactly what sections of the wetland ordinances were you violating here? I mean, you've agreed to the fact that there was a miscommunication. Exactly what was the miscommunication?
Ultimately, I didn't violate anything in the field at all. I didn't violate my permit. In the sense, he thinks, or he's saying I did because I didn't have a pre-construction meeting, and I did have a pre-construction meeting, and I included this is the project that I was starting for it. So the violation in his mind is a violation of the conditions, not the Wetlands Protection Act, of the conditions that he wrote, that I'm in violation for not having a pre-construction meeting, which we did have one in the field. He felt it was for this project and not this project. And in his defense, he said, well, you need to have a building permit first. And then I responded back to him, I don't want to build a house today. I'm not digging for one. All I'm doing is creating my pasture because I live over here and I want to develop my pasture at this time. And in the ordinance, I don't need a special permit to cut trees and vegetation to develop a pasture. Okay. And so I wouldn't be in violation of anything as of today. And somebody can disagree with me, but as I see it, I'm not in violation of anything.
All right, so it just leaves two questions. Number one, in his letter, he's calling for restoration to take place. What exactly is he talking about restoring then?
I'll go to the public hearing with the conservation. I don't know what he's talking about.
All right. And when we had the first meeting, we asked point blank if any clear cutting had been done, and we were told no, it was just trees being removed for the road, that none other at all had taken place. And now we've seen a forester's report saying it's been clear cut right up to the neighbor's property line.
It wasn't clear cut up to the neighbor's property line. It was clear cut exactly per the plans that the conservation approved and issued a permit with. The only communication, the only violation that we have is the breakdown of communication with Andrew, that we started work prior to this pre-construction meeting, which again, we had out in the field, and it was a misunderstanding. I thought we were having for that project, all three projects together, and he didn't feel that way.
I'm not making an excuse, but sometimes, we're all just part-time counselors. We're not in this building full-time, so I just have to re-educate myself as to why we're here. So one of the things that we brought up at the last meeting is 8.1.5 in the Floodplain Overlay Section, Part 7. So the planning board shall investigate the application and must make a report in writing within 30 days. Did we get this? Do we have anything from the planning board? So the answer was we haven't received anything from the planning board. So wasn't that what we talked about when we were here last time? Okay. So, did you reach out to the planning board?
The planning board knows we're here in front of you guys. The planning board knew 2-3 weeks ago when they met with the conservation, and I believe with Damien and with the mayor's office. This has been a year now. And why wouldn't they issue a report or any letter? It's a single family house. I can understand it's a commercial development or a subdivision. It's not. There's nothing here to write about.
Oh, well, listen, just say your name one more time again, Frank. Just pronounce it for me, I'm sorry. DeMarinis? DeMarinis, yeah, thank you. It's 3 times the charm. Mr. DeMarinis, so when I look at this, and it says the planning board shall investigate the application. So, and make a report. That's not my problem that they don't have a report here. So it's not my job to go figure out, go knock on the planning board office. And I did ask the planning board to be here today, but they are not. Let me see if he wrote hold on a second. I did follow up with that. I got a communication from them about 4 o'clock today, but let me dig it out because Matt might be the tail of the tape. So let me just. Put it in there. I don't think I can get online with that. Let me see if I did get a communication from Mr. Marrero, as we all did, but let me see if I can dig it out. My phone. Let me see if I can dig it out on my phone, and let's see. There's nothing about this, Council Murphy?
I read through items, I think I missed one.
Okay, it was for various other orders. Okay, there's not, I was hoping I was clutching straws. I was hoping they would address this. No, that is not addressed in his letter I got. So it's dated today, but I received it at 4:15. It's for various, but hold on, Mr. DeMarinis. So I don't know what to say other than that was why. Now,
Can I comment on
oh,
this?
yeah, sure. If you have any, yeah, just.
Yeah, well, 2 things.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm very familiar with this process. Like I said, I've been doing it my entire career.
Yeah.
Been in front of boards all the way from Upper Vermont, New Hampshire to Connecticut. Okay. One thing is that it says clearly in that they have 30 days. They did not respond in 30 days. But they still have plenty of time to comment to the building inspector. We're not asking for a building permit here today. Like he said, like Damien said earlier, this is, he's the gatekeeper of all the permits. So if there's any concerns or something, they can still respond.
There's no doubt you're right. There's no doubt about that, you're right. They can. And we can condition our permit upon that as well.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to suggest to you that we probably would if it goes forward. So there's no question you're right.
So it's not something that, I'm asking that like I said, I've been trying to permit a residential house for over a year now, and I'm just asking for a little relief from you guys and you know, and to act on it, that's all. So I can clean this up because I don't want it to be messy. I don't want this at all. I want it cleaned up, and I want everybody to be happy, all the boards to be happy, and have the appropriate communications with everybody. But and this is a critical point here in front of you guys today.
Great.
And then because from what I understand, you guys make a recommendation and it's still not it wouldn't be approved today. It has to go in front of the city council, correct?
That is correct.
So it's still however long out that before it goes.
But your luck happens to be in your favor in that regard because city council meets next Tuesday.
Well, hey, that's great. Then
Pretty good, huh?
That would be great.
Aren't we? We aim to please. I will say one thing though. One of your butters, I'm going to guess, is going to ask when because this is a public hearing. Because I did receive a communication from one of your butters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're one of butter. Well, you have several butters, but there's one. There's a residential
Yes.
next door. And so, and being there was concern about the clear cutting that was there, and so. I'm going to suggest that there might be a recommendation to see what you can do for appropriate screening. What would your position be on that?
We left a 50 to 100 foot buffer on my property of existing vegetation between my butter and myself.
So your position is that's sufficient?
Oh yeah, it's a huge buffer.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions for the petition? Oh, Councilor Bacon's here. Welcome, Councilor Bacon. I didn't see you come in. I apologize. Councilor Sullivan.
So Just looking over the report that the abutter had, the forester, it says because of the cutting, even with the 50 feet, the size of those trees expose them to wind, and that because they were sheltered on one side, they're weighted on the other side and are in danger of falling on their property. You see it different?
If there's any trees that, we've had detailed conversations, they were very unfortunate where before any trees were cut down on my property, one tree fell and did a lot of damage to their garage or one or two cars. And then they took care of that. And then a month later, it seemed like another tree fell, again, before any clear cutting or anything like that. And to this day, I offered to cut down the trees that they feel threatened by on my property, and I will do that. I'd like to get there to be able to do that, though, as long as it's not inside the riverfront protection area.
Yeah. So to Councilor Bartley's previous question, if that was a stipulation in the issuing of a permit that these trees be removed, would you have a problem with that?
As long as it's clear communications, I don't want to be caught in between with a breakdown of communications. Which trees exactly? I made the request that they put a big red X on the tree that they're concerned with. Again, and I can't remove trees that are within 200 feet of the riverfront, because then I would be truly in violation.
Well, that's easily solvable. So if we need to mark the trees, we would do it in tandem with the Conservation Commissioner. So that's an easy get. I think from what I understand from the abutter, and we'll let the abutter speak if they so choose, is that the screening, regardless of what you said, is insufficient. So the abutter's position, again, they can speak for themselves, is that they would be interested in seeing if you would be willing to plant arborvitaes, 7-8 foot tall, and have them grow to whatever height they grow to, 14, 15 feet, as a way to screen your property from that property.
I think it's to be honest, a little overzealous. I lost 600 feet by 100 feet of property already as a natural buffer, and the plant arborvitaes at this point, I could understand if it was cut to the property line, or even 20 feet to the property line, but having a 100-foot buffer there of natural vegetation, I'm going to say I would rather not.
You'd rather, okay, so it's a 100-foot buffer all the way?
Their house is right here. A 100-foot buffer right past their house. This is an existing barn here. Then it goes down, tapers down to 50 feet.
Okay.
That includes their driveway. 100 feet over.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioner? Councilor Murphy?
So the Conservation Commission asked for a plan by October 10th. Have you submitted a new plan to the Conservation Commission?
No.
Okay. Are you planning on doing that?
Plan for what? The only violation I have is to have I'm going to go, I look forward to meeting with the Conservation Commission members and having a detailed conversation with them. I don't know what they want.
So am I correct in assuming that you did receive the violation notice from the Conservation Commission?
Yes, and I was ready to go to the next meeting, and it was canceled for whatever reason, and I believe the next meeting is shortly to come, and I'll be more than happy to go there and meet with them and see what it is that they're looking for. Because at this point, the only real communications I've had is, like I said, I got yelled at by Andrew. That's about it.
And do you know when that next one is, the next meeting?
Thursday.
This week? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Tallman?
Thanks, Frank, for coming down there. I actually, as Councilor Bartley stated, got a chance to drive up by the property today, and went down the road and down the road you said, was that Red?
Mount Tom Greenhouse
Grease
Road.
Road, yeah.
Heard of that one?
And I did see the whole lot cleared out and everything, and it did seem like there was some open space there. close to the house and that road. I know the map shows there's a big, divide. You said, what, 100 feet?
100 feet by the actual house itself, which is the house is very close to the river.
Right, and the trees are taken, there's also some trees we stated that could be taken down, that are older and that could fall
Well,
near their house, or?
I think they're concerned with just any big tree, to be honest. But again, it's this, I'm like caught between a rock and a hard place. Provide screening, but then cut the trees down. So that's why I'm a little bit getting mixed signals, and so I don't know what to do exactly. And that's why I'm saying I need clear communications, that's all, from the abutter.
Right, well, I mean, what you cleared out is for what, a pasture?
Yeah.
What you clear, I mean, I saw the, whatever bulldozer or big tractor or whatever, and I saw the pile of,
And the excavator's there
yeah,
to develop that roadway
right, to
the power plant.
the power,
And
yeah,
so,
right.
and I'd like to clarify too is, when A asked me to stop, we stopped. But from what I understood from Andrew, again, this could be a breakdown of communications. But the way we read what he wrote was clear that he wanted me to stop on the development of my pasture, but they did not give a stop work order to the development of the roadway for the fire access to the solar field. Okay, so that's why we're still working there, develop that roadway for them. And I thought it was clear in that letter that he wrote. And I think there's no breakdown there. I don't know, maybe I could be corrected. And it's just for the work associated with my pasture.
Right. But, I mean, I also feel that as the chairman of the committee stating that if there's a possibility to put a condition, and if there could be some kind of a buffer. And I know you say you wouldn't want to do that, but if we voted to do that so you could have this lot, would that be a major problem or a setback for you?
It wouldn't be a major problem, but like I said, it is a 100-foot natural buffer. But if you guys vote to do that, then that's what I'm going to need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Marinus, thank you so much. There are no other department heads here. Mr. Cody?
Yeah, I don't know how close you are to wrapping things up. Just a couple of things, just for sake of clarity. The property is in the floodplain. Me and Mr. DeMarinis, we had a meeting early on in the project, and a little bit at odds about that, but I explained to him it's an overlay district, you're in the floodplain. And by the FEMA maps, you're in the floodplain. Now, if your property is elevated above it, that means you're in compliance with the floodplain, but you're still in the floodplain, right? So if the idea is that there's a little island above this area of blue in the map, which is the floodplain, and he feels there's an error in that, then it's going for a letter of map amendment called to FEMA. You're applying for that. And in effect, if that's the case and you do that, he wouldn't even have to be here, because then he wouldn't be in the floodplain anymore. There'd be no special permit required, because they're looking at the topography and saying, okay, you're above it, you're not in the floodplain. But as of today, it's in the floodplain, so you have to build it in compliance with that. We had a meeting early on, and I can't speak about Andrew's interactions with Mr. Mayor. I had nothing to do with it. I was not witness to a moment of it in person or on phone or anything like that. On my end, there's just one simple violation issued, and that's because we had a conversation on September 11th, and that was over the phone where he explained what he was doing, and I made it very clear, you cannot clear the land. The NFPI regulations were adopted by ordinance. You can't clear the land. You can't cut the trees down. That's basic floodplain regulation. The purpose of the trees is to protect the land in the flood and keep everything solid in the event of a flood. So you cut down trees, you weaken the land, you weaken the area, you bulldoze out the trunks. You're certainly going to make a change to the topography of the land, and that was made clear to him that day. There was disagreement about that, and he said he'd look into it, and by looking into it was continuing to clear the land the next time around, which is when I made the visit and said, to the guys on the site, what are you guys doing? Said not to do this, and it's just the contractors that are hired. So, I always feel bad for those guys because they're there to make a buck. They're not there because they're his personal employees. They've been contracted to do the work, and I said, well, I'm just telling you what I got to tell you. I'm passing on the information. Stop the work. And they got angry and said, well, we've mobilized our equipment, so we're going to finish the job. I said, okay, suit yourself. There's no bad words. I don't get angry at anybody for anything. Said, no, and I issued the letter. So that brings us to that. To give you an idea of the seriousness of floodplain development, we don't have a lot of floodplain properties. We have a lot of land, not a lot of houses, but right now FEMA will give 75% reimbursement to demolish that house the day it's built or to relocate it. That's how serious it is when you develop in the floodplain. We don't want floodplain development, period. And if you do it, it needs to be really done well. So 75% reimbursement to demolish it or remove it out of the floodplain and move it across the street. That's what FEMA's looking to do to all the properties in all the floodplain through grant money. So to give you an idea of what it means to develop in the floodplain. So a year of permitting, yeah, you know what? We expedite permits. We try and get them that next day if we can. Somebody applies for it. But there's a lot of considerations in this, process. Okay?
Okay, thank you for your perspective. Well, we are in a public, anybody else have questions for the department head or, okay, no, sorry. So we are in a public hearing. So here's the way it works with a public hearing, at least when I'm the chairman, is that you will come to the mic, you'll raise your hand. I will recognize you. You will come to the mic. You will state your name and your address. You will address me. You will not address the petitioner. You won't address anybody else in the room. You just address the chair. We're not gonna be here for, we have a full agenda, so it's not gonna be a, back and forth too much. But I'll give you a reasonable amount of time to say what you got to say, but it's not going to be more than 4 minutes. Let me say that for the record. So I'm not going to have a stopwatch, but we just want to keep it a reasonable time. The only one who gets to talk on and on here is me. So that being said, we are in a public hearing. So are there any members of the public who want to address? Okay, I say one. So come up to the microphone. Please state your name, your address, and off you go. You know what? Why don't you just leave it off? Just kind of take it off the mic
I'll just
stand.
speak loud.
No, take it off the mic stand so it's more comfortable. Are you okay? All right. No, that's not now.
Yeah, now it is. Okay.
All right.
Well, I want to thank Mr. Cody for explaining the fine points of the building permit and the process. I want to thank the committee who has been very agreeable and open to letting me kind of share my concerns. And I will just say that I didn't realize that when I was here a month ago standing and asking just some very early questions and agreeing with Mr. Sullivan, who said we both asked, is there site clearing going on that site on that day? And we're told by Mr. Showalter that there was not. Only for the road leading to the solar field. And
But just name and address if you would.
482 Northampton Street, owner of 482 Northampton Street, Mount Tom Rose's property.
And you are Nancy Schwartz?
Nancy Schwartz, thank you. Sorry, I got
It's all right, it's all good.
mixed up with the
Off we go.
that. Well, anyways, it was quite a shock 18 hours later after being in this room and being told that there wasn't clearing when I got down to our property and it had been completely cleared per the plan. I'm not saying, I've never said that Mr. DeMarinis varied from his plan, but I do know that he did not follow the process. Because I was speaking with Ryan Allen 2 weeks before that September 9th hearing and just kind of asking about, how this was going to work. And he said, well, there's no work going on down there, right? And I said, no, we hear people marking the perimeter of clearing, but no work has started, and he clearly said they cannot do any work there. So I don't see how there's any real gray area. But I will just say that Andrew Smith has been very helpful, very responsive. I mean, we do not like to be the people that are calling up and pointing fingers at work that's happening, but we are the only abutters, so we see this, and we've been put in this situation. Now I will get to the vegetation and the buffer. There is a buffer. Most of that buffer consists of these very tall, very old, one-side growth pine trees. We know, because it started last winter, and it's actually been going on for decades, these trees are coming down. They are old. Now that the supporting trees, the windbreak on the north side of this line that's left has been removed, these trees are even more susceptible to winter storms and winds and snow. And last winter, we had 2 trees come down, as mentioned, did considerable damage to our property. I would like to think that Mr. DeMarinis will do what he says, but I found that he was not open to taking trees down last winter when I was concerned about more coming down. And one did come down 2 months after the first tree. So, you know, he says he'll clear the trees, but he'll do it on his schedule. And we waited for his schedule, and we had to pay the price for that. I'd like to show a picture that I took today that shows kind of the view from his property over to our property. And you will see that there is a clearing, which is where the 2 trees came down last winter, where we are very exposed to his pasture. And on the other side are the trees that will soon be coming down. We had the arborist do a study, and he says he thinks these trees have 3 years of life, that in all probability they will be coming down in 3 years due to natural life cycle and winds. So we are concerned. We do not want to be that exposed to a pasture. I feel pretty strongly that we would like a new tree line, arborvitae's planted for a couple 100 feet, basically where our house starts up to about where the driveway turns after it goes by our boiler room building. I think it would solve a lot of our issues from prevailing north winds. I mean, you know, we can right now see the solar panels. We can see Route 5 traffic. We've kind of lost a lot of the privacy and, you know, the beautiful place in nature that was down there. We understand that Mr. DeMarinis will build a house and is entitled to build a house. That's never been something we've opposed, but we just want it done thoughtfully, appropriately, and anything you can do to kind of make us all happy would be appreciated. I think that's all I have. I don't know if you have questions for
Schwartz.
me.
No. Was anybody have a question for Mrs. Schwartz? No. Thank you, Ms. Schwartz.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? No. Okay. Well, Mr. DeMarinis, you heard from your immediate abutter to the south, I guess. The pictures, I mean, the pictures are pictures, okay? So there may or may not be a 100-foot buffer, but there's, you know, maybe 100 feet, but it's devoid of vegetation, certainly in some points, devoid of vegetation. Second of all, your contractors went ahead and did something that they shouldn't have done when they knew darn well they shouldn't be doing it, because we just heard from the building commissioner. They knew darn well. And they're your agents, meaning it's on you. There's no debate there. So we heard it from the building commissioner, that's on you. That being said, you know, the wheels got to keep rolling. I'm of the opinion, and I'm just one vote, and as you quite rightly pointed out, this body just recommends to the full city council. You know, generally the full city council is going to agree, but they don't have to agree. They can amend it, amend anything that we do. So, and I used to know the site by heart, but I can't remember it. But I know we have a lot of problem here, but I want to put her on the spot. Under special permits, city council, it might be 9.4 point something. We pretty broad authority, put any conditions, you know, so long as they're reasonable, upon any special permit that we issue, any condition we want. So, so there's that. I think at a minimum, if we're going to pass this for recommendation tonight, it would be to fully comply with the letters, one dated September 13th, so to the full satisfaction of the Conservation Commission, and the other one's dated September 20th, to the full satisfaction of the Building Commissioner. I think those would be at a minimum. I think the other one would be a removal of trees pursuant to the decree of the Conservation Commissioner, and that the special permit would, and it would be marked by an X with the Conservation Commissioner with you or your agent present, to make sure that's clear. And the other condition would likely be, if I had my way, to have you plant appropriate buffering between your property and the property that abuts you to the south, specifically arborvitaes that go in the ground, not at 4 inches, but at 7 feet, and then grow to a certain height. I don't know how high they grow, but I think they grow to be 14 feet or thereabouts. So that'd be my opinion. So I don't know but we're several steps we have to do. Is if the board wants to close the public hearing, we can. If the board wants to continue this public hearing, we can, if you feel like we need to get more answers, or if this panel wants to condition, especially, you heard what Mr. DeMarinis said, you heard what the abutter said. The abutter is not looking to stop this, the abutter is just looking to get some consideration. So we can condition the special permit with what I just said. So what's your pleasure, gentlemen? Mr. Council Tallman.
Yeah, my thought is, I mean, he has a property and he's been waiting a year, and I agree. I mean, it has to, you want to move along with this, and you don't want to wait. If we don't vote on it now, you might be waiting until November, December. But I'd also like to say that the people, abutters, have a right too to ask for certain things in that property. So my thing is, if we can do those conditions you stated, and put this to a vote tonight to approve it with those conditions, and pass it on to the full city council and let them make a decision if they feel this should be approved or not. I think we should try to move it along tonight, because he has been waiting, for a number of months, or actually filed about a year ago, right? And the abutters say he is going to build a home there, but I think we should try to be attentive to the neighbors too, to try to put something there for them, and I think it'll be fair to all parties to get this moving along.
Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Tallman. The only thing I would go along with approving it, and that we are removing, I believe it was 23 trees that are in question for a 3-year life cycle, and that the request was that I believe 20 or 25 of the dark American arbor vitaes would be planted, but also, and I think this is important, because I think one of the problems with this whole thing has been communication. If the Conservation Commission is meeting this Thursday on this proposal, that we, prior to our meeting, or at our meeting, we would get a notification from the Conservation Commission that they have in fact okayed the final plans and the approval. Because right now, as far as I recall what your letter said regarding the Conservation Commission, they requested an October 10th reply. I'm assuming the reply will satisfy the Conservation Commission, but I would like to have the Conservation Commission telling us that for our October 15th meeting. I'm okay doing this today with that idea, but I don't want to go ahead and approve this on October 15th and then on October 16th have the Conservation Commission say, well, we didn't really want to go along with that. Now, maybe that's overkill, but they're going to have a meeting Thursday. So I think if we put that stipulation in and they're aware of that stipulation, then we should get a communication from them, or you as the chair should get a communication from them saying this is what's happened and this is what we approved. But I would go along with all the other aspects of Councilor Tallman's and your recommendation. I do think I would like to move it along. I do want to make sure that what you want to do, Mr. DeMarinis, is what you can get done. I want to make sure that the neighbors have a residence that is safe and also has some of the quality of life that they've been used to, and that we do so within the legal parameters.
All right. Okay. That being said, your point, Councilor Murphy. Just the I don't know if the Conservation Commission is going to meet or not, so I mean, sounds like they were planning to meet a little bit ago, and that got put back, so hopefully they'll have a quorum for Thursday night. So I don't really want to, but I think if we make this contingent upon, I wrote down four things. One is to have the Conservation Commissioner work with Mr. DeMarinis or his agent to identify trees to be removed with an X, and that'll be, Councilor Sullivan, did you want to address this?
Yeah, just briefly.
Yeah, I'm just reading the conditions off, Mike, so let me just get through this first, and then I'll recognize you, okay?
Yeah.
So it would be to remove the trees with Andrew Smith, or the Conservation Commissioner, his recognition, and then they'd be appropriately marked, and then it would be to plant along with the Conservation Commissioner, hopefully work in conjunction with the abutter too. I mean, it's got to be reasonable, right? But the plant a reasonable amount of vegetation, arborvitaes, if you will, to serve as a buffer. And then the other two was comply with the Conservation Commission's letter. So to their satisfaction, their letter's dated September 13th and pretty much lays out what it says. But I think I heard Mr. DeMarinis say he's going to address that on Thursday night should they have a quorum. So hopefully that'll satisfy Councilor Murphy's concern about the meeting Thursday night. And then, of course, what Mr. Cody said relative to the September 20th letter, but as he rightly pointed out, which I didn't know that, but that the building permits are pretty well overarching on everything. Should the petitioner want to go ahead and build a home, but as you said, he's not at that point yet. Councilor Sullivan.
So with the first stipulation, the only question I have there, or the problem I have, is already we were told once that no clear cutting had taken place when it obviously had. So I would prefer to have the arborist that worked for the abutter work with the Conservation Commission to choose the trees that should come down, not the
I'll second that.
not the engineer that is working with the developer.
No, I don't think I said, I think I said the conservation director would work with them, but we didn't close the public hearing, so that's good. No, we didn't. So, but I would just like to say to that point, I think the arborist are you paying for your arborist? Yes. Okay, so my only thought there would be, Mike, I don't want to run up their arborist bills. You know, Mrs.
I didn't send you the detailed report. It's a 25-page report with 23 trees documented that he is marked as eminently dangerous. So I would be happy to forward that report to...
Those trees are already marked?
Not physically, but marked on his study. He did not go onto the land. He was respectful. This was a visual assessment that he did. With photos he could take from our driveway.
But his point was those would be the ones...
Those would be the ones that we would be asking to be removed because...
Because why?
Because they will be coming down within 3 years by his assessment anyways. And before they can fall and do more damage, it's just better to take them down.
Okay, so I just heard what Mr. Cody said about taking down trees. All that. So what's your position on that, Mr. Cody?
They're not within the 200-foot buffer.
Okay.
They are along the driveway.
So again, in our, the federal regulations, NFPA regulations, which we've adopted at the state and the local level, you can't clear cut anything until you get a floodplain permit. And the way we work it here and normally across Mass, that's your building permit, which encompasses, we do a special permit, we didn't have to, but we made it that way by ordinance. So you can't cut down the trees or bushes or any of that. That's part of a floodplain development permit. Really what should have happened here is that conservation, again, I wasn't there, I wasn't part of any of that, really was deeply involved in picking and choosing which trees could go or not go. I think the dilemma we're in now is that this has all been clear cut. And what I think is being referred to by this arborist is, you get a tree, that tree had a lot of friends around it. Now it doesn't have friends around it to help it keep up. You know, you can't clear cut back a forest and expect that last tree to function the same way with the elements. So I don't know. We're in a rock and a hard place, to use Ms. Meredith's terminology. And you guys make the final decision ultimately on the special permit and these conditions. I don't really have much input on that. Just giving you the regulations and where we are.
Yeah, I think whatever we do here, there's going to be a consequence, and I don't think this is going to be a cure-all for, it's just tough to predict what's going to happen to these,
Right.
nature, Mrs. Schwartz and Mrs. DeMarinis. So we're just doing the best we can with the information we have, so that's all.
Well, I'd be happy to share the arborist report with the Conservation Commission or whoever wants to go out and do any marking.
All right, so, the way I'm hearing, thank you, Ms. Schwartz.
Thank you.
The way I'm hearing this is that the special permit that we're going to recommend for approval is going to have 4 conditions. The first condition is going to be the Conservation Commission working with an independent arborist as identified to work with independent arborists to identify trees that will be the responsibility of the property owner. Identify trees to be removed. That'll be responsibility of property owner within a so for a permit to be valid, to be removed within how long?
Requesting 3 years.
3 years. All right, that's what I was going to say. Plant appropriate vegetation to serve as a buffer between the petitioner's lot and the southernmost abutter, but specifically along the property line for no less than 150 feet, but no more than 200 feet. Okay, and it'd be specifically arborvitaes, and not of no less than 7 feet when planted. And the other 2 are pretty straightforward. The September 3rd.
Put a time on that too.
Within a,
Say by spring or summer of 2020. I mean, if we're
within
starting
12 months.
Okay.
From the date of the special permit. And then the September 13th letter and the September 20th letter. Anything else? So the motion is.
Hearing's still open?
Yeah, oh gosh, that's right, we have to close the public hearing, gosh. Well, you got it.
Just one more clarification on the arborvitae.
Go ahead, Ms. Schwartz.
Well, it was that, I had gotten some recommendations on how close they should be planted. And the Weinzick nurseries in Hadley that grows these said for a 7-foot-tall tree, they should be planted trunks 5 feet apart. So so they'll grow in as a screen. And I did a little markup on the site plan to kind of show where I could see those happening. I'm happy to share it with Mr. DeMarinis and you if you'd like.
Well, this will all be, well, did you know you were going to get into this when you ran for office, Pete? Did you? I sure didn't. All right, so, those are the four conditions to the special permit. So I'll make the motion that we approve the special permit with the four aforesaid conditions.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Close the public.
Oh, yeah, jeez, why do I keep forgetting to do that?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Unless anybody wants to speak again.
I think they're all set. Mr. DeMarinis, you all set? All right. Everybody set? So motion made and seconded, close the public hearing. Under discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Motion to approve the special permit with the four aforesaid conditions.
Aye.
Motion made and seconded, under discussion, hearing none on the motion. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, we approved it. All right, so that's recommended for full city council. Full city council will meet 10:15. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Damien.
Okey doke. So Counselor Murphy, just because we have Counselor Sullivan here, so one thing I want to, because mainly this is several from Counselor Murphy, there's an order by Counselor Sullivan at number 5, kind of sitting sort of in the middle of all the Counselor Murphy orders.
That's fine.
So what I'd like to do is suspend our rules and take out of order agenda item number 5.
So moved.
A motion made in second to suspend the rules and take up item number 5. All in favor?
Aye.
5, 6/14/19, that the city council approve a grant to One Holyoke CDC as recommended by the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, in the amount of $32,000 for a project at 43 Canal Street. Council Sullivan.
Yeah, this is the only one that got referred, I think, back to committee.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we should get them.
And
They should all get referred.
yeah.
Mike, you're the one that moves them on the floor.
Well, we've moved them good through the floor, and it hasn't tied up the committee, so, this one's here, I think it speaks for itself. This is a, good one. This is the old Portuguese American Club. The plans they put forward, for using it for a community center, they've already started using it. This would be, under historic preservation. I don't know what else to say about it. It looks like a good project to me. The committee thoroughly vetted it. Good presentations were put on, and I think it should go forward. One thing we have talked about is one of the members of the old Portuguese American Club, and very dear with all the community, was George Neves, and I think, I don't know if we have to make it a condition, or I don't know if we can make it a condition, but One Holyoke and everybody involved has agreed very much on their own to put a plaque in the building honoring George, in memory of George. And that's about the only discussion I've heard about it. So.
Yeah, so Counselor Sullivan brought me a point. That's something I raised with Counselor Sullivan when we first brought this on the floor, that I thought it would be appropriate to name the building after Attorney Neves. I think he was a friend to everybody here, and he passed away all too suddenly. And I think while a plaque inside the building is a nice gesture, I think that it would be a little more special to name the building in, if it's go forward. But before you do that, I do see the project description in here attached to the order, and I'm just getting this now. But Council Sullivan, the 32,000, is that, I mean, it says total funding 32,000. I can't imagine that's the total deal here, but maybe it is. So what's?
No, it's not the total deal.
All
That's what the.
That's just the CPA. So what's the $32,000? Is that leveraging something, or what's going on with that?
Well, this is mostly for work, stucco and trim on the outside. This building was built in the 1840s. Stucco wasn't a something done in the 1840s. They've gone in front of the Historic Commission, and it does still stay within the scope, although not original. historically speaking, it's been there a long time, and it's how people recognize the building.
Well, what else has to be done, Mike, is my question. You know, I mean, is there a budget for?
A good portion of this is facade work. In doing this kind of facade work, you have electrical issues as well that go along with that. It takes quite a bit of special work to get that done. It's quite costly. I can't remember. I'm seeing this for the first time in a couple of months, so.
Well, did you want to have Attorney Dunn? Did you want to speak on this?
Yes, if I might.
Okay.
Okay, so I think Attorney Dunn is here representing One Holyoke CDC.
Right.
And so this is former Mayor Martin J. Dunn, former City Councilor Martin J. Dunn.
Right.
Were you on the school committee too, Marty?
Well, as mayor, I was chairman of the school committee.
Okay, that's right, he's chairman of the school committee, and
Yeah.
of course, former state senator.
Thank you.
So, Marty Dunn, go ahead, Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Mike Moriarty had a conflict this evening, and he couldn't be here. He wanted to be here himself, but he couldn't be here, and he just asked me to attend and represent One Holyoke. The 32,000 would be for the stucco on the outside of the building. It's very old, and they want to do repair work on the outside of the building. It would entail some work on the inside of the building as well, as Mike said, electrical, etc. But for those of you that I haven't been there in a while, and they've converted the building into a community center, and they've done a lot of work on the building to date, and they have great plans to have that building bring the Ward 1 community together, and to have a place where there can be meetings, where there can be presentations. I know last week they had an open house for elected officials, and it's really impressive to be there, to do movie nights, to do presentations. They've done a great job, and this work on the outside of the building would just further the progress they've made there already. So in reference to George Neves, I've had these discussions with Mike, and they have every intention of doing something in tribute to George. We've talked about a speaker series being named the George Neves Speaker Series, whether it be a plaque or I'm not certain that Mike's board of directors has made a decision yet as to how to honor George, but certainly that's the intention of the One Holyoke Development Corporation, to honor George Neves for all he did for the Portuguese club over the years. As many of you know, there was a diminishing Portuguese population in Holyoke as years went on, and George really was the driving force of keeping that facility open, having banquets down there, having meetings down there, and George gave a great deal of himself to making sure that organization stayed current for many years and stayed active in this community, so it would be a great tribute. As a friend of George, I know it would be a great tribute to him, as you all know him as well as I, but One Holyoke has every intention in the world of doing something appropriate to honor him.
So, Marty, you think it's probably a bridge too far to name the building after him? Or?
Well, I would name a lot of things after George Neves if I had the opportunity. I would vote to name anything in Holyoke after George. I think he brought a presence to this community that deserved that. But I can't make that representation, and I don't even think Michael can on his own, because he has a board of directors. So I don't think he can make that representation. But it's certainly something I would advocate. I don't think Mike would have any problem with it, and if that, we would certainly bring that to the attention of the board of directors.
Well, how about this? We can put a condition on it that this city council strongly recommends, and I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Strongly recommends that the building be named in honor of George's memory, because I think you pretty well said it. Without George's kind of in the background cajoling all of us to go to all those dinners on Valentine's Day and all the rest of that I went to a bunch of those, and
Right.
but he packed the house, give him credit.
He worked tirelessly, and he kept that building functional for many, many years in this community. So I certainly advocate what you're saying. I don't make the decision, but I certainly am not opposed to the,
I mean, a plaque is nice and a speaker series sounds nice, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have your name on the building. And I think putting George's name on the building, whereas I don't think there's any of them. And George, this was a member of this body too. So I think it would be a nice, really nice gesture as a former city councilor yourself, and then I think George, all he did, to my knowledge, I mean, I don't know who else is down, it'd be, yeah, Mr. or Mrs. Neves too.
Right.
But, and I think in George's
Well,
honor,
obviously
I think would be, I mean, especially somebody who's, you know, down in downtown for so many years practicing, and I don't know. So that'll be my motion I'll make, but okay, thank you, Marty.
I certainly would advocate that. Thank you.
Comments, questions from the committee? Okay, I'll make a motion, we approve it with a strong recommendation to the Holyoke, one Holyoke CDC that they name in honor of George.
Second.
On the motion, under discussion, hearing none, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Dunn. Thank you very much. Okay, so,
Councilor Bacon.
Chairman.
oh, hold on, did I miss you, Counselor Bacon?
No, I just wanted to make a request. Is it possible to go to item 10?
It's very possible.
Thanks.
It's more than possible. Oh,
Make a motion to take up
okay.
number 10 off the table. Let's suspend the rules, take up item number 10.
Second.
on the motion to suspend the rules, take item number 10 off the table, under discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 10, before us, that's, 4 of us filed it, or the OPED provide an update on the purchase and sale contract status of the following properties at the next DG&R meeting relative to Geriatric Authority and Lynch School. And it just so happens that we received a communication from Mr. Marrero on that very topic, among other topics. And Mr. Marrero says the following: don't expect a big ta-da at the end of this. B2 Health and the city executed a purchase and sale agreement for the former geriatric in August. The agreement provides them with a 6-month due diligence period. So that takes them to February 2020, with a closing to occur within 30 days after that. So that takes them up to March. So the due diligence period is through February. Despite recent reports that Bay State Health, one of the partners in the venture, is evaluating the other partner, U.S. Health Best, we, the city of Holyoke, have no indication at this time that the project has changed. So that's that update. Relative to Lynch School, Colvest and the city executed a purchase and sale in July of 2018. The agreement requires that they obtain zoning permits prior to a closing. They already garnered a zone change in May of 19. Zone change. In May of 19, they submitted their first documentation towards site plan review to the planning board. Site plan review has been continued to allow more time for Colvest to address design concerns for this site. The planning board has commissioned a technical peer review on Colvest's traffic and circulation plan, which should be available for discussion at their November 12th meeting. The purchase and sale agreement has also been extended to allow for this permitting process to take course, with the current 90-day extension due to be enacted this month, so that Colvest will be able to close on the acquisition in early 2020 or sooner. So those are the two updates. Councilor Bacon.
So I know there's nobody here from the department to answer any questions, but I was just wondering, in the 6-month period where they can do due diligence, is that just related to the site? Or does it give them the ability to get out of the agreement for other business reasons related to the partner?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I not having the agreement in front of me, that's really hard to, I'd only be speculating, Councilor Bacon.
But that would be a question that if we could get back to planning,
So Mr. Marrero says, should other questions or concerns remain, please feel free to reach out to me directly at any time. So that's a question I'll happily ask him if you want to just.
That would be great. I would appreciate it to go through the committee. I'm just concerned, and Councilor Bresnahan was the one that took the lead on the conditions up there, but the longer it sits there idle, the more problematic it becomes.
Well, what we're hearing, and I'm hearing this from HPD, is that the site is not secure.
Right.
So why isn't the site secure? And why isn't it being checked on all the time? And what symptoms does HPD see? HPD sees people going in there having paintball wars. So I'm sure Councilor Murphy's seen those elsewhere. I know I have. I know Councilor Sullivan's seen them elsewhere because he told me. So it shouldn't be a shock, but on a public building, why isn't it secured, checked on regularly? I can't say. So we'll have to address that. I don't know what the best way to deal with this is, whether it's to table this for November. I'm of the opinion we should probably do that, but because there are more questions than we have to follow up with, and if we tabled it, bringing that report to City Council next week isn't going to say or do anything.
Well, right, and my only other question in that regard is, if we are currently the owner until such time it's closed, then we need to button up those entryways. The city needs to.
Yeah. Mr. McManus? Yes. Do you care to come up to us, just to the mic at this point, just to address that point for us, please?
So we're talking about the geriatric?
Correct.
The system, or the building is unsecured, and then many of the windows on the first floor have been smashed and broken, and people can get in that way. We've set up cameras inside and outside the geriatric, which are connected to the dispatch for fire and police. So whenever the cameras see somebody coming, they do dispatch police officers there. The police do show up quickly. We've seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of activity, people coming into the geriatric. We haven't seen any additional vandalism since the cameras were installed. We did get some prices for securing the geriatric, and these were from outside outfits, and the quotes were around $25,000. So at that time, we didn't move forward with it for lack of funds.
Yes.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. I wasn't aware that the cameras had been installed and that there had been a significant change up there.
Yeah, there has.
So
And-
that's very helpful.
And what we were seeing was kids just coming in to break any glass that they could. There wasn't anybody living there or doing other unsavory things. It was just more juvenile delinquents.
Thank you.
Councilor McGivern.
Like on lack of funds, I think the sale price is around $250,000, if I remember correctly. Why wouldn't the mayor appropriate some monies to secure the building if he knows there's $250,000 coming?
So I guess when I got the price of $25,000 to secure the building, that's when we looked at installing the cameras for cheaper. We never had a real conversation with the mayor's office about appropriating funds to secure it.
I would suggest that you do, because I think protecting $250,000 in a development that's going to bring a lot more money, into the city is important. And I commend you for the cameras, that works good, but I think we need to secure that building before we no longer have a building.
Well, just to that point, Mr. McManus, Mike, what's the developer's intention?
I believe the
building.
developer intends to demolish the
I
building
think they're gonna demolish it.
and construct new.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't going to be any salvaging of the building.
On the other side of the coin, to Councilor McGivern's point, which I lean towards his recommendation, was, what if someone's in there and falls on a piece of broken glass and it goes right through their aorta, and they die right on the spot? Who's liable for that?
I'm not sure. I mean, we have no trespassing signs up. Like, I don't have the legal answer as to
I
who's
don't either.
responsible.
I don't either. So, it's dangerous. Council Sullivan, Councilman McGivern, you all set?
Yes.
Council Sullivan.
Yeah, Mike, wouldn't we have funds in the revolving account from the vacant building fund?
So I believe there are funds available. I thought there was a use for those funds already. I'm not sure how much money is there. And it's just when I saw the price of $25,000, I thought we got to find something else.
I totally understand that, to put $25,000 into a building that's
Going to be demolished.
demolished, but we've got, we right now, we don't know how many months it could be before this actually happens, from what we just heard right here.
March.
If at all, Council, is fencing not an option? Like cheap fencing or something? No?
Fencing is an option, but I think it would be more expensive to ring fence the entire geriatric.
That'd be more
And there's
expensive.
always ways around fencing. So boarding up and securing would be a higher level of security than fencing.
Mr. Chairman.
What, Councilor Bacon?
You're done.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I feel like if this research has been done as to who is up there and what is going on, and we have a reasonable way to know what's going on up there, which it seems like we do, and if we have records in the police department showing that the activity is greatly decreased, if we're having success, I know a neighborhood, Sunset and Ashley, that needs the $25,000 spent up there when we can get it. So, I know we all have to be looking at priorities and what is going to make the best difference for the residents with the monies that we can
Right.
utilize. However, if there is money available in that revolving account, that's kind of why we made it stronger. But to Mike's point, there may be, I know there's so many priorities throughout the city that it might already be tagged. But I'm very happy to hear about the cameras and that they've been effective and that the police have been responding. I just want to make sure the project's going forward and we're not going to be sitting here with a lot of extensions and we think we have something, but it's not really done. That was my perspective on the order. So, thank you.
Council Sullivan.
Yeah, Mike, do we have any idea about how many windows have been broken so far?
I would guess around 40. And some of them aren't just windows, but they're the full height windows.
Right.
Along the corridor between the two buildings.
So was that 25,000 to board up all of the windows or just the 40 that are broken?
It was to secure the first floor, the ground floor. There's windows on the second, third, and fourth floor that are also broken. And I guess boarding it up would prevent the elements from coming inside the building, but there's no real access from outside to those higher floors.
Well, the building's scheduled for demolition, so, well, not scheduled for it, but that's the ultimate fate of it, from the sounds of what the developer's proposing, so we wouldn't care about windows on the second or third floor or whatever.
Assuming it happens.
Pardon?
Assuming the development happens.
Yeah, but even still, as far as securing access to the building, if the cameras and stuff are working well right now, and that's dramatically decreased it, if we just secured the windows on the first floor, that offered easy access to the building. I got to assume that would be significantly lower amount than the 25,000.
The 25,000 was just for the first floor.
Just for the broken windows on the
Yeah.
first floor?
Yes.
All right, wow.
Well,
And the cameras are working. I get notifications whenever they detect motion. So I'll see it, and then, 5-10 minutes later, I see a police officer go by to either catch or chase the people away.
On an unrelated question, once this building sells, are those cameras available to be redeployed in other areas?
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the plan.
oh, okay, well, actually, that was a better update than I thought, so, okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Councilor McGivern.
Just on Lynch, if I could, I know it's a dual order. I just want to go on record, I'm disappointed with the slow progress on the Lynch proposed project. I realize the site plan review and the importance of the traffic study, but I think we all agree that this is one of the top developers that ever come before us in this chamber, and if I remember correctly, it was Vanessa Hagan that did the traffic study, which is the top engineering firm that we've ever seen in this chamber. And they're requiring a peer review of the study itself, and the delays just seem to be going on and on. And, right now, we got a developer that wants to take down a building that, if something isn't done soon, is gonna be falling down. And I understand, traffic is important, and that area has a lot of difficult, traffic issues that need to be resolved, but I think it's time to do it and make it work.
I'll make a motion, we table this until our next meeting. I think we got some update, but I think we deserve more update, and I do think we may find out more especially in terms of the hospital proposal.
No problem doing that.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion made, second to table. On the motion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Attorney Barnes, are you here for 11?
I think so.
I think that's your the only one?
I think so. Unless you need me for something else.
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules, take up agenda item number 11.
Second.
On the motion made and seconded to remove item number 11 from the table, and discussion hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The order is that, from Mike Sullivan, the law department send out demand letters to the insurance company under provisions of 93A and 176D relative to business insurance. I think this is for the Essex House?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you. I'll start off to see if law department has anything to say about it. The order speaks for itself.
I spoke to our outside counsel. We have a settlement offer that is being proposed, and we are waiting on that to come back. Unfortunately, sending out demand letters right now and firing up the insurance company doesn't make any sense. We have pending litigation. There's current settlement negotiations happening. The problem with this case is there's so many parties involved that when one settlement goes out, you have to then coordinate with everybody else to figure out if that's going to work. There's claims, cross claims, et cetera. So, it's litigation. It's nothing goes fast in the court system whatsoever. And especially if you're talking settlements, negotiations, mediations, those things take time. So right now, we're not looking to send out any Chapter 93A demand letters.
When was our claim with the insurance company filed?
I don't have that information. Our litigation attorney is Tasha Marshall. This litigation is long before my time, so as far as all the detailed facts, I don't have it. Attorney Emma would be your go-to source for any of those details.
Who's the attorney again?
Attorney Chuck Emma, he's our outside counsel.
Where's he located?
Florida, he also keeps office in Massachusetts when we need him.
So he's here in Holyoke when we need him?
Correct?
Interesting. I'd like to guess that this thing has been over 5 years now.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know it's before your time, but I've got to say this goes back well over 5 years. And I know the courts move slowly, all right? But this is a common tactic with insurance companies. And what they've seen here in Holyoke is a turnover and a turnover and a turnover and a turnover in our legal staff. And this is no reflection on you, Crystal, all right? And it's easy for them to sit back and do absolutely nothing, all right? This is a common tactic of the insurance companies. Cross claims, no matter what, all right? They will drag this on and on and on as long as they can. The history of these is that all of a sudden, once they get a demand letter, the settlement happens quickly. That's when they take it serious. That's when they tell their client, right, that they are at risk of triple damages, plus our legal fees, plus interest for the entire duration of this claim. I see no reason. Now, how long have we been waiting for a settlement offer? And you're saying right now there's one coming?
There's a settlement that's pending. We're waiting on a response.
Explain to me what that means, pending. A settlement pending. We either have a settlement offer or we don't.
There is a settlement offer pending. We have to wait for a response. You don't get a quick response back in these situations. You have to confer with your client. You have to figure out what the obligations are of everyone involved with that settlement.
You get a quick response when you give them a 30-day demand letter.
Not necessarily.
Pending to me, you know, we're pending putting a man on Mars. All right, that's pending also. But I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. And this has been dragging on for 5 years. How much has Attorney Emma billed us since this began?
I don't have that information for you right now.
You know, what incentive is there for him to settle this? The longer it drags on, the more he makes. We're paying him by the hour, right?
I don't know if it's an hourly or if it's a contingency fee on this case.
Well, can I just interject, Mike?
Yeah, you're the lawyer. I'm not.
No, that's, believe me, that's not why I'm interjecting. All right, I think what I'm hearing is probably on this one. I don't think this is a bad order, but at least I learned something tonight. So, Attorney Barnes, thank you for your answers. I was going to suggest that we get, well, just some clarification. One, let's figure out Mr. Emma's how he's paid, so we can get a communication on that. That shouldn't be too hard. Second of all, when you say there are a lot of parties involved, you know, if you could quantify it, I'm not saying now, but if you can quantify that in a letter as well or an email, however you prefer. So we can get whether Attorney Barnes is hourly or contingency, that makes a difference. If we can get an understanding as to how many parties and specifically who they are, so maybe a list if it's 4 or 17 parties, that would be somewhat helpful. Clearly, we can't get in the middle of a settlement settlement negotiations. So, but if you get a chance to confer with Attorney Barnes, hopefully it won't be too costly. If he could get some kind of a communication to us with a status report, and if you could have it sent to this committee. I mean, he can cap it at 1 page, so 1 page shouldn't be more than an hour of his time. Just something that can be sent to this committee. As long as it doesn't, give away any state secrets. I mean, and without holding him to too much, it would be somewhat helpful, so we could sort of, and, you know, we won't meet again till probably the middle of November. So if you think you could do that by then and send it to us by that point, that would be somewhat helpful.
I do have an update on this. The law department has an update on a few things. We need an executive session for a full litigation update.
Okay, I didn't, yeah, exactly, so I don't want to do a litigation update. So is that what you're thinking, that this would be ripe for that?
I think we have a couple of things right for that. It makes the most sense to do everything at once.
Okay, so that makes, okay, is that something you're working on with the council president?
Shortly. We have some appropriations that'll be coming and litigation update, et cetera, so.
Okay, so maybe, okay, so those would be 2 or 3 questions. Well, I don't want to change, it's your order, Mike, you can do what
No,
you
keep
want.
going, keep
But
going.
those will be some questions that, in a litigation update, I'm never going to remember this. So one is Mr. Emma's, you know, how he's paid, so we can at least get that. What else did I say? Jeez, I just said it 2 seconds ago. Yeah, I guess we don't need a letter from him now, because, you know, you're going to give us a litigation update, which makes more sense, right? Just how many parties, you know, who are the parties involved? I guess I'd want to know that. So, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
That's fine. I don't understand why any of this would have to be done in the executive session, and why it couldn't be done in front of the public and the full council. It's an insurance settlement, all right? Claim that the city has against an insurance company.
Right, but until a case is closed, we keep things in executive session.
It's been out there for 5 years or longer.
It collapsed December 11th, 2014.
5 years.
Almost 5.
Good, very good call, Mike. I'm proud of you. Well, it sounds to me, what I heard from the law department is that because of the status of the settlement negotiations, it sounds like they've gone past the point where a 93A or a 176D would be appropriate. But how do you want to do this, Mike? I mean, I think at least we learned something. So, I mean, I'm glad we took up the order and you filed it, but how do you want to?
Well, as far as it going past the time where this would be appropriate, I'm not happy with the fact that something's pending. It's been pending for a long time. I'd like to have a definite time frame when we expect to see that settlement offer. All right, whether it's in a week, a month, certainly not more than 60 days from now, or we agree we're going to pursue this in a more aggressive manner.
Well,
And maybe we need a different attorney on it.
well, we can keep in committee until we hopefully will have a litigation update, but it's up to the council president to organize that. Doesn't look like it's going to happen for October 15th. So we won't meet again until November 19th, unless there's a special meeting called between the 15th of October and the 19th, because the 5th of November is an election night. And I won't be the only one on the ballot this time, so that was a very lonely feeling, Councilman McGivern, but we made it. Yes, right. Well, I just met among the elected officials, right? C'est la vie, as they say. So, Council Sullivan, would you want this tabled until we meet in November? Maybe between now and then we'll have a litigation update, or we'll get more information from Attorney Barnes through Attorney Emma.
Yeah, we can.
Or the other way around, Attorney Emma through Attorney Barnes, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if we leave the table for 30 days, it's been, as far as I'm concerned, tabled for 4 years, 9 months.
All right,
Second.
Okay, motion made and second to table. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Make a motion, if you don't mind, we suspend rules and take up item 9.
Motion made and second to take item 9 off the table. On discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
That the Park and Rec Director, who's with us tonight, come on in, Ms. Shepherd. The Community Development Director, who sent the communication, she's not here, and the Public Works Superintendent appear before the committee to discuss the plans and the needed funding to upgrade Springdale Park. So with us is is Park and Rec Director Terry Shepherd and DPW Superintendent Michael McManus.
Okay. Okay. So if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Council Murphy.
So again, I filed this, I know that they were working on doing some design improvements for Springdale this past spring, or maybe past winter, but, and then somehow things ended up getting off track, and the funding was, I think the funding was not allowed or something along that line. So I wanted to, I know when I first went to a few meetings, they were talking about fields, they were talking about benches, they were also talking about the picnic area, the parking entrances, which I do think are important. I mean, if I look at Springdale Park now, one of the major activities takes place around the sprinkler and the picnic tables, and I certainly think that they need to be considered in any future plans. I know also the maintenance building is something that needs to be considered, and I've also talked to people about the potential upgrading of the baseball fields and trying to move them away from the potential flooding. So there's a lot of things that are in line, but I just wanted to get an update on what's going on.
I'll give you a little bit of history first. I can tell you that in 2018, Parks, DPW, we were awarded a $50,000 grant to look for design and engineering work for probably a renovation of the park. And we did call that Phase 1. And we moved right along. Bids went out, and the city actually hired Malone and McBroom as our designers. They did some of the preliminary work that Michael would know more about, the topographical stuff and...
Yeah, they did a survey of Springdale Park. They were doing conceptual plans, project phasing, and they're also looking at part of the park is in floodplain, and so any work that they would do could result in filling of the floodplain. So then there was a need for compensatory storage. They did some site visits, but overall it was really high-level conceptual planning of the various phases of improvements to Springdale Park.
True. So in 2019, another application was submitted to Community Development to begin Phase 2, the actual redesign. And that was our preliminary area that we chose to work on was the parking and the entrance improvements. Because we really wanted to focus a lot on the actual design of the park and what we could have there and public input. I don't really know why, but we weren't funded for 2019 to carry on that way. So right now it's our intent to go back and resubmit to work on the design and the engineering this year.
And would that be CDBG?
Yes. But in the meantime, I think it was 2018, about $16,000 was awarded just to make some basic improvements to the ball diamonds, fencing, and benches. So that's still in the works, as is money was cobbled together, a $92,000 allotment to work on several of the ball diamonds throughout the city for just improvements, basic improvements, player benches, backstops, whatever. So that's where we are now. Right now, because of an environmental review from HUD, we're on hold for about a month before we proceed with what we're actually going to do. But all this work will be done by June 30th, 2020.
When you say the work, the design work?
No, the other two allotments. It says 18,000 here. Oh, it was 16,500. That's just for Springdale Park to make improvements on the field, fencing, backstops.
Benches.
Benches, backstops, yeah, player benches. That will conclude by June 30th, as will another allotment for $92,000 was for improvements in other parks in the city, ball diamonds. Crozier, Bonin, McNally, and I think I'm missing one, but there were 5 diamonds.
So next spring, the 3 baseball fields, or four baseball fields, actually, that's another issue.
Yeah,
Because that
Yes,
was,
it is.
that softball field or little league field, whatever, is in a precarious situation if there's a game on the 90-foot diamond. And I have said that
Correct.
since it was built, that is an accident waiting to happen.
Correct.
And I really think we need to make sure we don't end up scheduling things like that. But, so we're talking about the benches, but we're also talking protective screens, or
Yep.
most of them already have protective screens.
they do.
and
There's
they're-
some
like, they're
repairs
all
that need
pretty
to be
good,
made,
so.
backstops.
And I
then-
know that some backstops have little parts that need to be repaired
Yeah.
and things like that. So, but let me, because there's other things that I think, and I'm hoping are gonna be part of this. I know the swing set at Springdale is in terrible shape.
It is.
I know that, and I wanna publicly thank John Tuig for getting the sprinkler system working this year after there had been damage to the computer system, I think, right? And he ended up figuring out how to get it going, and it's very well used, and the picnic areas are very well used. But again, you talked about the traffic study and the importance of that. We need to provide a driveway access to the picnic area which does not allow the people to drive their cars right to the trees. I mean, there are kids running around there, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, running around, and there are people backing up their cars and dropping. I understand they want to carry or get their grills and everything there, but we need to find a way to provide parking that is relatively close and attractive to the picnic area, and make sure that we're not endangering the people using it. And again, my primary concern is kids. We got kids running to the cooler or to the sprinkler system, then going back to get a hamburger, and then trying to go to the play area, and it's just, it's another one of those accidents waiting to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's actually, I guess I didn't explain it, but that was part of our reasoning for working on the entrance and the parking, and without doing a total redesign, I'm not sure if things should be moved closer to the parking, but that was our intent too, because Saturdays and Sundays during the summer are just horrific with cars, and you're right.
Yeah, I don't know the specific design to get it done, but I just know what we have now, where people go right over the walkway on Main Street.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And even though we have a rail, and I guess the other thing is we could expand that rail to go farther, and they would have to go farther away, but then I would wonder, are they gonna just go and do it on the other side? But
Probably.
but that is one of my concerns. So I really want to make sure that, and I've told
Actually, we've already-
constituents that I know the swing set, we're looking at replacing that and getting some things in there. I think right now there are 2 functioning swings out of 4. I mean, again, and I've had constituents saying, when is that going to be replaced? So.
It's my hope to submit at least a grant for some playground equipment this year with community development.
Okay.
But not a total redesign, because I really have high hopes that we can follow through with this project.
Okay.
So,
In the Malone and McBroom, they studied the entrance to the park was part of their phase 1. Because we directed them to look at that as being a concern.
yeah, they talked a lot about having just a clear entryway where people would know what side to come in on and exit from.
Right.
Yeah. And we've also cleared it, part of the $92,000 improvements, at least temporarily, we could install guardrails, or not very attractive, but at least to stop people, because people are entering from all over.
Yep.
They go through the parking lot down to the field, and so, yeah. It is our biggest concern, too.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate that, and obviously, I'm hoping it gets done. The other question related to was the floodplain thing, and I was down with Mike Williams, right? Sorry, from Suez, and he was concerned about some of the flooding that's been taking place, and we're just looking and again, going long-term, if we were to consider moving diamonds at some point as part of this, they would be far more functional if they were closer to the street, and going with the outfield. Way out in the outfield might get flooded, but right now, if we have a bad spring, I know when I coached Dean, You know, I was always like, okay, are we ever gonna have a practice before we play a game? So that is something, and as we look at if we're looking at a design and we're looking at renovating a field, that we may actually look at moving a field or two. And the two that would make sense are the 60-foot diamond and the 90-foot
Yeah.
diamond. Those are the two. For some reason, the 75-foot diamond doesn't get flooded, to my knowledge. I've never seen it where it was flooded, but the other two are pretty frequently flooded. So, again, if at some point down the line, and we're looking at it, the other thing I'm sad about is that very few people played games at Springdale this year. And I'm not quite sure why that happened, who made that decision, but it was, I mean, I don't think there were half a dozen games at Springdale, other than when I ran the
No.
Murphy League, so,
There wasn't very many. I don't know why either.
yeah. So,
Council Sullivan?
Thank you. Earlier you mentioned the parking and safety features and the entrance design and stuff like that. Wasn't that in a original request to CDBG this year? For a substantial amount of money for that?
It was,
$240,000 was requested.
Yeah, and how much was approved by the Citizens Advisory Committee?
I don't think they approved any. I'm not sure. But in the end, it was vetoed by Mayor Morse.
I know that, but I'm pretty sure there was substantial amounts of money committed to it. But not,
not the 240.
Yeah,
not the
no.
240, but I believe it was 100 or 150.
I don't know the numbers, but I do know that 92,000 was reallocated to make repairs in parks, so.
Repairs in the parks, yes, but nothing to do
No.
with what was originally requested.
No.
Right. And I believe that original request, a large portion of it was approved by the Citizens Advisory Committee, by the Development and Government Relations Committee, and by the full City Council, and then vetoed by the mayor.
So Springdale Park entrance and parking, 240,000, and then community development approved 237,250, and Citizens Advisory approved 80,000, DG&R approved 80,000, full city council approved 80,000, Mayor Alex Morse cut it to zero. So there's a record right there. How about that?
So just to say where the money went, as long as you want to call it up again so we get it clear on the record.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do, Mike? You want me to find it again?
We should have called it
Just
up
deleted
again.
it.
Yeah, all right.
I'll bring it back for you, Mike.
No,
It's on the record.
no, it's not that I'm trying to get on the record.
What do you want to do? There you go. Oh, right there. Blow it. Oh, sorry, I blew it for you. Springdale Park, right there.
Yeah, I've got that, but if we go, sorry,
It's all right. What do you want to look at, Mike?
I want to scroll down the list.
Oh, sure. You can shrink it if you want. Does that help?
So, the Citizens Advisory Committee offered nothing for El Corazon of Holyoke. The Development and Government Relations, nothing. The full City Council, nothing. But the mayor put $80,000. Well, there's a matching number.
Oh, there you
So
go.
the
That's where the
80,000
80,000 went.
Here's where the 80,000 went that could
Went
have
out
been
from
used.
El Corazon de Holyoke.
No, it
Oh,
went to
okay.
El Corazon.
Yeah, so not to Springdale Park, and went to El Corazon de Holyoke,
Yeah, for art on Main Street. So there we
out
go.
on Main Street.
We didn't get parking, we didn't get safety features, we didn't get better use of a park, we got some flags on light poles.
Well, I think we might have had a consultant working on that as well. I think at the October 15th agenda, we'll see two contracts. We couldn't take those up the other day, but we'll see two contracts for consulting. So we'll find out what was working there. That was for $12,000. Well, $11,999, just to be specific.
I made my point.
What else, Mike?
I made my point.
Okay, Council Solomon.
Yeah, just be brief. I think this is a good money well spent. I think the area down there, whatever we have to work with, is important for the safety. I'm all for the parking. Go by that park often, especially this summer. I've seen a lot of kids out there in that water area, the water park there. They get a lot of good use out of that. It's probably one of the busiest water areas, spray parks in the city, and anything you can do to expedite the swings to the park area for the kids, because it's even probably now this time of year. I think a couple weeks ago I was thinking it was a hot day, but the water was shut off a couple weeks ago. They probably shut the water off at a certain time of the year. But the park equipment, I think, is important, right?
Might have been on.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
We were leaving it on weekends, I think, throughout September.
Yeah, it was
Oh, okay, because it was a hot day there
like
sometime.
9 days ago.
Okay, because
I saw
that's
some people in there, so.
they were in there, yeah. And in any little things, just like two swings, can make a difference in a kid's enjoyment
Well,
there.
I'll be honest with you, it's my hope that we can somehow model what happens at Community Field. Community Field is probably our busiest, well-maintained park. People actually rent picnic tables, and the pavilion's always rented on weekends. It's clean. We've had very little trouble, except there's a bear family up there now.
Oh.
But I think what makes a huge difference is being able to have part-time staff
Right.
up there. They're there, and the bathrooms, and it's safe, and it's clean. And so I'm hoping we can model that at Springdale.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I go along with the baseball fields. I remember as a kid playing down there. They're getting wet. They're getting soggy in a big rainstorm. And then in the configuration of the fields too, there's one of them that goes almost into the other one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think I remember that. It worked, but I mean, there could be issues with that if they design it a little bit better, where they could, work together better in that field. But it is a good park. It's been for a number of years, and
It's beautiful.
I love that area. I love that park, and remember that little hill up there in the back. Was that the bunker or whatever to protect the river from overflowing?
The dike.
The dike, right? And that's pretty, pretty
I
impressive.
could tell you when I was a kid, but we'll.
No, we'll
don't wanna go
save that
into
for another
history.
one. Yeah.
Oh, we sure do. But boy, that's another night, that's for sure.
But any work that can be done, improvements at any of the parks, I think is important, for the community. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Just one last, and if I could make this request, if you could, in the next 30, 45 days, just kind of put a tentative plan of what the long-term goals are, whether it's a dollar figure or not, just so that, and what the priorities are. And I'm going to assume that the traffic and traffic and safety issues are number one, and then the convenience issues are after that. But if we could get a long-term perspective of what we would like to have in 2024, and when we would like to get those done, I would appreciate that, because then I can go to constituents who are asking, and it's not just my constituents, it's constituents from all over the city that do use that park. And I would like to see if there's some way we can get more, and again, I don't know why, but more of the baseball and softball games back down there this year than they were there last year. And I know they're using the Dean facility more.
I know.
And there's less teams, so obviously all of those things play a role, but it just seemed like there was, it's a nice field. And there just wasn't any games there, so.
Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. Mike, as far as the flooding of the baseball diamond back there, that has nothing to do with the river itself coming in and intruding in the floodplain, does it? I assume that that's more of a condition caused by the flood wall and poor drainage.
Correct.
All right. Yeah. I just wanted to get that out there in the public, and so that all the members of the committee understood that it wasn't that the river was or the dike were leaking, or there was problems there with that.
Right, and there's also the Springdale pump station, which is a stormwater pump station. Should there ever be a condition where the river is high and that area needs to get pumped out.
Right.
But it's just the geological condition of the park that wasn't there before the flood wall was put in. And then the wall kind of trapped water.
So would we be up against a similar situation as we are in other parts of the city with having to get, if we wanted to eliminate the flooding or the problem back there, where we need the blessing of the Army Corps of Engineers? Possibly. And
yeah, and also since that area is in mapped flood storage, we would need to create compensatory storage somewhere else within that area. So part of Malone and McBroom's plan was they were looking at a nature walk type thing in the southern corner of Springdale Park, where you could have a wetland area and get the storage that you would fill in to make better ball fields somewhere else.
I get that part. But the concept of using any of that for storage would involve inundating apartment buildings and houses in that area.
Yeah, it's just,
it's
it's because
ridiculous.
it's mapped that way.
Right.
And regulations and laws are the way that they are, so it's, I don't know, I don't want to say that sometimes logic doesn't apply, but this
No,
would
you can
be-
say that. That's exactly what's going on here. In order to store water there, we'd have to flood Springdale.
Right.
So it's not going to happen. The pumps, should they ever be new, are to get the water the heck out of there before it floods the neighborhood.
Mhm.
All right.
It's your pleasure, Council Murphy.
Make a motion that the order's been complied with and that we receive a report from the Parks and Recreation Director and the Superintendent within 45 days of the plans for Springdale over the next 5 years.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded to say this has already been complied with, conditioned upon a receipt of report within 45 days, sent as a communication to the city council on what the intentions are for that park through 2024.
Right.
On discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, Terry. Make a motion, we take up item number 3.
Back to regular, well, do we have one more department head here, is that?
Yeah, that's what I'm bringing them in for.
There we go, right back
He's
to regular order, okay.
Well, 8's DPW also.
Yeah, I mean, 2 and 7, 5, I mean,
Well, let's try to,
I'll
motion made and seconded to take up agenda item 3 on discussion, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Item number 3, the order that the committee meet with the superintendent of DPW, who's here, and the health director to seek solutions to the problems of city-owned and other vacant lots which seem to be neglected until there is a complaint. The city needs to, at least with city-owned lots, have a regular schedule to clean up the trash and remove debris. Councilor Murphy.
yeah, this, and I've talked with several people, but I've had constituents concerned about it, and obviously, we keep taking, and we have more vacant lots than we really would ever want. And the city is beginning to have more ownership of more vacant lots than we ever would want. And, we just got to find a way to set some kind of schedule for how we're doing that. And a couple of questions I would have, and I may be totally off the wall here, but I wonder when we start to take over, who actually has an inventory or a listing of all the inventories of city-owned that are vacant lots? I mean, do you get that, Mike, or do you get that, Sean?
So there,
Or do we just kind of say, oh, that's a lot I got to take care of?
well, the planning department has a list that they've created through the GIS system of all the city-owned properties, and then they've gone through those and identified which ones are buildings, which ones are lots. So that information is out there for use by the city when the city takes over a property. There's an email that goes around that says the city now owns whatever Newton Street, and at that point in time, it really becomes DPW's responsibility as a city property to maintain the building and grounds. With the building, I don't have the staff to maintain the structures, and with the grounds, I also don't really have the staff to stay on top of all of these properties to make sure that there's no litter or illegal dumping, or even that the grass gets too tall.
Yep.
We don't have a procedure where we do regular inspections of the open lots. I know through the building department, the building maintenance and demolition supervisor does have a list of properties with buildings, and he does make rounds at those buildings to, check in on them. DPW, we could do a better job of patrolling the areas and looking at the lots and seeing, is there litter? Is there dumping that needs to get picked up? How tall is the grass? Is there vegetation that needs to be trimmed? And I can start making that a procedure that we have to follow. Whether it's every week, we drive around the city looking at all these lots, or every other week. But historically, we have relied on complaints from either city councilors or complaints to the building department or Board of Health that this needs to get taken care of, and then at that point in time, we kind of manage it because it's an issue and it's a concern.
Yeah.
We should do a better job, and we'll try that moving forward.
So and first of all, I appreciate the idea of trying to get a schedule, and I think that's the heart. I know manpower or staffing power in this modern age, I got to talk the right way, is important. But we also got to make sure that at least, and to my thought, it would be every couple of weeks, and so that let's say we have 25 or 30 city-owned vacant lots, and I'm probably being conservative here. Do you have any idea how many we have, Sean?
I don't have a count, but there's quite a few.
It's up in that ballpark, right?
Planning told me at the beginning of August that there were 40 vacant lots and 18 lots with a building on them.
So 40 vacant lots?
Yeah.
Okay, and the other ones have buildings, but they're city-owned lot
They're
buildings,
city
right?
owned,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
And we're worried about lots owned by the city, by the redevelopment authority, by HEDIC, and also, lots owned by Parks and Rec.
right.
I'm trying not to be concerned with properties owned by the school department or Waterworks, G&E, those other set of city-owned properties.
Right. And I assume they take care of their own.
We hope so.
Yeah. But, if it's 40, if it's at all possible, and the other thing I know you have a contract with ROCA to do certain things, and I don't know if there could be a contract there that gets them, you're gonna do 8 of the 40 lots on one week, or on Monday, and then 8 more on Wednesday, and 8 more on Friday, and then you go back, and the next week they're doing 2 days. I don't know, something like that. But that would be, every lot would be getting a cleaning and a pickup every 2 weeks, which I think would create some improvement. I don't expect it to be perfect, because obviously they're not in great shape. People are throwing things in there that shouldn't be throwing things in there, but it is it's like a magnet for people to throw them, because they see it not being picked up and they just continue to add to it. So obviously there'll be people that are going to do it no matter what, but if we can stop those who are a little bit more reasonable in terms of what they're looking to do. But if we can get up, and that's really all I'm looking for, let's see if we can get all the list of the vacant lots and just try to get to them every 2 weeks. And if it's just a quick thing and then we're good, that's fine with me, as long as we're getting the basic gist and it's looking like, hey, we're not just neglecting it. Because when I get complaints, that it's basically, we're looking like it hasn't been done. And I know with my constituents, and I obviously, I have a ward that has a lot of vacant lots. It's, well, this doesn't get picked up, that doesn't get picked up, why should I do this, why should I do that? And I want to make sure I can say to them, because the city's doing their part and you got to do your part, and we all work together, we're going to make it better. So that's my goal, and I do appreciate the input. And again, if you can at all figure out a way, and if you need endorsement to try to get some money, I am more than willing to support that concept, because I think we have to maintain. If we're going to take them over, we got to maintain them. Hopefully, we can move them and redevelop them, and not have to be worrying about that down the road. But for right now, It's a city problem, and we have to resolve it. So, thank you.
Sullivan?
Yep. And I truly appreciate Councilor Murphy's efforts here. The problem I have with us patrolling these like this and then spending money and resources cleaning them up every time we see them dumping trash, we're going to be chasing our tail. One thing I'd like to suggest going forward is exactly what's going on up at the geriatric center. If we could place cameras on these vacant lots, all right, it would, number one, act as a deterrent to the people that are illegally dumping on these lots and the rest of the vandalism and other activities that go on these vacant spaces, and in the long run would be more cost efficient than constantly going around, number one, deploying city resources, checking on them, and then going around and cleaning them up, because it's doing nothing to stop the perpetrators. That what I would suggest is that if we do have funds available, what we do with some of these vacant lots is get these cameras up. We are seeing the proven results, all right? And see what we can do to deter the activity and not have to be cleaning up after it.
I think we had thought about putting cameras in some of the more problematic properties, and one of the obstacles we ran into is that we were told by the law department that there are some issues with setting up a camera and it capturing private property, even in its periphery. You're not, and we had talked about putting cameras in alleyways as well, where we had illegal dumping, and so you're not allowed to film private property without express consent of the property owners. And at that point, we were told that that's not a ideal solution because of the legal challenges it presents. So we had put some cameras in alleyways where we were not filming private property, and we had someone climbed a light post and lit one of the cameras on fire, and another one was destroyed. And so we've had not great luck with the cameras, but we had thought of that, and I would be willing to try to pursue those ends. I think there's just some challenges before that can be implemented.
Well, I mean, right now we're talking about city-owned vacant properties, not private properties.
What I mean by that is if you mount it on, say, a lamppost, and it captures any private the camera itself captures any private property in its vision, you have to get consent from. So even if this is a private lot and the camera is here and it captures a little bit of this privately owned lot or a little bit of this privately owned lot, we would have to get consent forms essentially from the neighbors to mount cameras there. That's what I was told.
Well, if I was a neighbor of a vacant lot that had people dumping on it all the time, I'd be happy to sign that consent form. And I think, I can't speak for the entire population of the city, but I can't think of anybody who wouldn't, unless they were part of that activity.
It doesn't sound like it would be a huge hurdle, but at least that's something you could probably ask. So, sorry, Mike. Mike, how you doing on staffing?
I mean, we're close to 100% of staff right now. We've got one supervisor position open, and then one parking control officer that can be filled.
Parking control officer?
Yeah, it would be a second Dan Augusto.
Okay, so Dan's still out there doing it,
Still
right?
out there, yeah.
And what are his hours?
His hours are 8 to 4.
Okay, so what would the other Dan do? Similar hours or just or?
Similar hours, earlier hours. The other Dan would help us maintain the parking garages.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, because I think our meters go till 6?
I think it's 5.
Go to 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other Dan would maybe cover till 5 o'clock and then maybe take care of the garages or?
Right.
All right, so are we looking for resumes for the other Dan at this point, or?
So the reason we haven't looked for resumes yet is we're negotiating with the union to modify that position to include the additional responsibilities of maintaining the garages, landscaping. But we've got a a verbal go-ahead from the union to post for it, and we're starting the procedure to be able to post for it.
Oh,
So
okay.
I would think that within the next 2 weeks, we'll be posting for it. We have to internally post for it within DPW, and then if nobody signs up or bids for the job, then it would go out to the general public.
So that'd be nice, they could work under Dan's wing. I mean, Dan's been doing this for so long.
Right.
I mean, that'd be a nice feature, then when Dan retires, which I think is probably the next few years, that person could sort of move,
Yeah.
become, not the other Dan, but the real, the new Dan.
Right.
Or whoever that might be, yeah. Dan's got so much knowledge about this, you hate to see him go, but at the other time, he's been walking around downtown for, 20 years anyhow, doing that, so. He's a valued employee, that's for sure. I know I value him when he's always when I was down here working, so. Okay, what's your pleasure, Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, just in reply to comments of Councilor Sullivan, and then I don't disagree with trying to put cameras in there, but we still would end up having to do the yard work type stuff. I mean, I can tell you there's 3 or 4, and they don't have a lot of debris from people's trash, but the grass is 1.5 to 2 feet high. And those are also the kind of things. I mean, I would hope that if we could put cameras, that we avoid having mattresses and couches and everything else. But we're still going to have some kind of program to do the yard work, keeping that kind of maintenance. So whatever we can do to get the vacant lots to be as healthy, because I'm sure there's also things in there that are danger to health, and also environmentally from an aspect of cleaning up and picking up the trash. I mean, I'm all for whatever we can do, but somewhere down the line, if we can do it every 2 weeks and just kind of clear things up when we get into, especially when the grass growing and the brush growing, that would certainly be a major improvement. And if we can put cameras, I'm all for that as well. So, but I appreciate the thoughts and trying to put some kind of strategy together. We just have to deal with it. I mean, we're going to get more properties, not less. From what I'm gathering, there are some that are going to court that are probably going to become our properties in the near future. So again, the more we can prepare for it, the better we do it. Maybe we get some people to think, I want to buy that property because things are looking better. So that's an optimistic view. So I would just say that the order has been complied with.
Councilor Solomon?
Yeah, I just want to say something, and I think it's great to look at that. It's sort of like preventive maintenance. Look at this and try to keep all these properties clean until none of us like to call you for things. I mean, I've called both of you for different things and properties until it's too late, where things get so bad that people are calling us and saying, look at the condition of this alleyway or this house or this property that is just gotten out of hand for weeks. So I mean, they talk about trash breeds trash, and if you have something clean, it's harder to throw something down there or throw stuff there. You're still going to get it, but if anybody's been to Disney World anywhere, you don't see a speck of dirt because it's always clean. You're afraid to throw a wrapper down on the floor, but I think it's important with us gaining new properties and new vacant properties to try to get on top of this with what we have, as far as staffing. And I know that's a difficult thing we've been dealing with. And I know Roca does a great job with a lot of the city properties, cutting the grass and keeping things clean. Whatever they can do to help out would be a big benefit to these lots here in the city.
Okay, motion's made. I'll second the motion that the order's been complied with. On the motion, on discussion, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so complied with. All right, so we'll move on, and we'll take a motion to take item 4 off the table.
A second?
Motion made and seconded to...
I think there's a couple, because item 4 and item 6, those people are not going to be here. I'd like to take those up last so that we can have
all right, so
Sean and Mike out of here as soon as possible.
Item 7?
Item 7, if that's possible.
Okay, motion is made, so it's seconded to suspend rules and go out of order, take up item number 7. On discussion, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. The order that the committee meet with representatives from the Building Department, Board of Health, Planning and Development Office to review the conditions of buildings and the alleyways off Main Street from Sargent to Hamilton. This is a situation which needs both immediate and long-term action to correct a dangerous situation. Council Murphy.
Yeah, again, and I just went by before I came. I wanted to see what it looked like today, if it was any better, and it's not. I know Sean's working on 421 Main Street, right, 421?
The one we're working on specifically doesn't have a parcel number. It's what's left of the garage on Main Street there, next to
Yeah.
415, 417.
Okay. And it's owned by the owner of 417, correct?
It is correct, yes.
So, I mean, I know they're aware of it. There are, if you go in the alley, there are actually parts of the building that are hanging and looking like they're ready to fall. I'm almost positive there are people going into those areas, and I don't know what they're doing, but it's probably not something we want to have them doing there. The one without the address right now, the actual inside is actually falling into the street from below. So, you know, it's a situation that obviously I think we're going to have to put a little more priority into it. I know Sean has been very receptive in terms of trying to cite the landlord, and I think you've also cited him on the other one.
Yeah, so, I mean, the issue here is that well, in that block, you have a couple of active parcels that kind of bookend the Main Street side, but then in between those bookends, you have a row of some problematic properties, the Harp and Drum Store being one, and then the neighboring building that is mostly just a facade, and what's left of the garage doors there. And that's actually on our list of properties that we'd like to, it's already had a survey board done, like we had discussed via email.
Right.
And so it's on our list of ones to demolish. I don't expect the owner of that to come forward or to claim any responsibility for that, or the Harp and Drum. And then near those, you have another vacant building, the yellow one there, whose owner, the name is escaping me now, but it's owned by a private organization that is defunct. And then you have...
You're talking the 4-story?
No, in the other direction. There's a yellow, a lower building there if you're going towards Sargent Street. That's also vacant. And then next to that, there's another one owned by Arnold Construction, which is a larger mixed-use building, and
Okay.
that's also vacant.
Okay.
And they're all on the vacant building list, and they accrue fines. It's just that some of them, you're never going to get any action, and they're either going to have to be demolished or taken for taxes. Like the Harp and Drum Store, I believe, is going to have to be taken for taxes because there's no one there to respond. No one, responds to any of our the liens or responds to any of our violation letters, and so I don't think there's really a very positive outcome for that other than taking it. And then the same with the smaller yellow building that I believe is like 412, or I'm sorry, like 411. It's next to the larger building with the X on it. So there's like La Copa, and there's a large
Yeah,
building
you're
with an
going,
X.
it's actually like 427 or something.
You may be right, yeah.
You're going in the other.
Yeah. And so a lot of those buildings, I think that's the only recourse is taking them. And the one that's owned by Arnold Construction, he has paid some of the vacant building fees there, but we're concentrating on another building he owns on High Street that's been problematic. And it's just, at that point, it's, how many buildings you can work on at once in court and through code enforcement.
So, and I appreciate all you've done, and I did also get some comments from the planning department, and we have. I guess this is a perfect example of why I filed the order to have a bond to do demolition, because I know. First thing Sean said to me is, if we had more money for demolition, some of these buildings would already be gone, and maybe we would have less problem. The other thing we got to be able to do, at some point, we're going to have to try to figure out how to get development once we clean these places. So that's one of my other orders is related to. But again, if you can check that alley back of that, I mean, that, it's somewhere down the line, someone's gonna be in there illegally, but.
There
it's gonna-
today,
it's
there is somebody who's squatting in the remains of that garage building. We've issued a notice to the owner. That notice, the period to respond is expiring this week, and then we'll have a contractor clear what can be cleared safely out of there. The danger is some of what's come down, I don't think you can safely remove without disturbing what's left of the front part of the building. And that'll have to be taken down by a professional demolition company.
Yeah, no, again, I think from an economic standpoint, there's the furniture company, I think 2 doors down.
Yep.
If you were, or from Nueva Esperanza's aspect or La Copa, any of those, when you're walking down Main Street and you start to see the building is coming out towards you, and then you see all the red X's, it's a negative that we need to make a positive, so.
Agreed.
And again, whatever you can do to clean up as much of that alley and make that as secure as possible, and, you know, I mean, you know that I'm trying to work to get money for demolition, because I think we gotta clear these things out before something.
Unfortunately, the bad part of this is some of those buildings still have value. They still have potential, but the issue is, either taking them for taxes and removing them from the people who are refusing to develop them, and then, the city has to dispose of them either through RFP or through a sale, and that's a long process in and of itself. And then the other ones that need to be demolished, it's about getting there, because there's a long list of those that need to be demolished as well. But this one is definitely on our radar, and I mean, the alleyway, I was there today, it's free and clear to travel, but some of those properties do need some attention.
And I'm pretty sure I saw the vagrant, because when I was going in, someone was coming out, and then I saw someone driving in and started, I thought, well, there's nothing there to do back there, so obviously they were doing something, so.
Council Sullivan?
Yeah, recently, I believe we sent that request to the mayor, went through finance, and I believe the full city council, requesting either to bond or appropriate from the rainy day fund, stabilization, for demolition. Has the mayor approached either the DPW or Board of Health about that request? Have you heard anything where that stands?
I have not.
Okay. As far as the buildings we just mentioned, you mentioned having to hire an outside contractor. Why wouldn't we use the city demolition team?
He may be able to, so I'm not his supervisor. Typically, we hire someone to do some of the demolition, and then he does some, so that may be a possibility. I just meant that it would have to be done by a professional and not the contractor who's gonna clean up the site.
Right. It seems to me like the team we've got in place could make quick work of that garage.
Yes, I believe that.
Like in one day.
I believe he has 616 South Summer, which is a city council order for him to take down, which I think he's in the process of doing. And then 7 Owens Place, which it's an abandoned house that burned recently. And so he's got those.
Yep.
Those are in the queue, and then once that's resolved, Jose may be able to get that down.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could do that, I'd be appreciated. And I appreciate 616 South Summer Street.
Yeah, that one needs to go.
Yeah.
Council Murphy?
I'll make a motion the order's been complied with, and, if it just keep us up to date.
Motion made and second that the order's been complied with. Under discussion, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, Sean, for coming down to visit us.
I'll make a
Councilor
motion we
Murphy.
take up item number 8.
Is there a couple of these that we could do together?
Do you want to do them together?
This is the last one with.
Oh, with him, okay. I know we got a reply from the,
Yeah, but this is the last one where Mike has to be here, so.
Okay, motion made and second, take number 8 off the table, suspend our rules. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
That the committee meet with the superintendent of the public works, the engineer, city forester, to discuss problems caused by planting trees on city streets. Discussion should include the types of trees which might be planted without having a negative impact on neighborhood sidewalks. Council Sullivan. Councilor Murphy, I apologize.
It's okay. Yeah, I just filed this because I've had a lot of constituents asking me about getting their sidewalks repaired because the trees have been lifting them up. And then I did talk to Mike, and I talked to city engineer Bob Parent, and you know, they suggested that we need to have a discussion citywide so that we don't keep making the same mistakes. And I did get something from the city engineer who indicated that he couldn't make it, but that Mike was going to fill in for him. So I'll defer to Mike at this point, if that's okay.
Sure. So what Bob found is there's really no silver bullet out there for trees and the roots other than soil preparation before the tree is planted. So there's been barriers. People have tried to install barriers to prevent roots from growing towards sidewalks or out towards the streets. But what they found is that tree roots like loose, non-compacted soil over compacted soil. So if you have a layer of compacted soil underneath the roots, they will grow wherever the soil is loosest. And underneath sidewalks, there's generally looser soil than the harder compacted soil down below. And the tree roots also prefer moist or wet soil as opposed to dry soil. But with the barriers, people have tried to, confine the tree roots to growing down and out. And what they found is the roots grow up and over the barriers. So generally what we've found, the recommendation would be to have a very large pit that the tree is planted in to provide a lot of looser material for the roots to grow. And where there is loose material and the roots grow, there's less likelihood that the roots would cause the sidewalks to pop or affect the roads. People have also found that if you have a thicker sidewalk, that might be less likely to lift. So in the city, we have a 4-inch thick sidewalk is the standard. So we were talking about having maybe a 6-inch thick or even an 8-inch thick sidewalk in areas where trees are going to be planted. One thing that allows you to do if the roots do push the sidewalk up, is it gives you more of a cross section to shave. Sidewalk shaving is something that we started doing. So instead of removing the entire panel, you just kind of trim the edge, the lip that's sticking up. But if your sidewalk is 4 inches thick to start with, you can only shave an inch, inch and a half before you start compromising the sidewalk. If you have a thicker panel to begin with, you can shave more. And then as far as a species of tree, there wasn't anything in Bob's research that said one type of tree is better than another for not having roots that would cause the problems with sidewalks. One thing he did find was that the recommendation for not having shallow-rooted trees, just because they're more likely to fall over, which causes a totally separate problem, sidewalks. So it kind of comes down to adequate planning. And what we would be doing is coming up with a standard detail and a procedure for how you would install a tree in a tree pit. And you'd have to look at both new construction and construction within existing conditions. So we have a lot of empty tree pits downtown, and we wouldn't necessarily want to make a 5x5 hole in the sidewalk and the road to accommodate the trees. So finding some way to set up the pit for tree growth that wouldn't cause problems in the future.
Again, I mean, first of all, thank you and thank Bob for putting this together. I thought it was extremely well thought out, and you know, I mean, I think with this plan and starting to work on looking what we're going to do and not and be thinking 20, 30 years down the road, or 10 or 15 years down the road, we're going to be in. I know when I first talked to Bob, he thought the kind of tree that you planted was going to be a significant factor, but after studying it, he thinks that it's not so much the tree, other than fast-growing roots. He thought if there were fast-growing roots, that could be a problem. So I'm just thinking, let's grow things that are not quite so fast. And that somewhat would solve that problem. But he did talk about, I know some of the places I'm at are probably, I'm going to say the tree was planted in maybe a 2 by 2 square foot area. And if I'm not mistaken, he's suggesting something along the lines of 8 by 6 or something like that?
Yeah, so for the Dwight Heritage and Front Street project, the project going out there, the design was for like a 5 by 5 area, surface area, and then down for the pit that the tree would grow in. And these are going to be tiny trees that we put in. You know, they're not the mature trees that you see. But what that does is it gives the tree room to grow. And we're also looking at the possibility of having different gradations of backfill material. So you would have, if your pit's 4 feet deep, you would have something for the first 2 feet, and then another material up above.
So, again, I'm real pleased with what's been presented. I think we could be in a situation where we can have trees lining the streets without having to keep going back and repairing the sidewalks. And obviously, we get the advantage of having the trees, but we also get safe walkways. So I appreciate the efforts that's been put into this, and I really commend both of you for doing that and creating an outline of how we should do it and what we should do, and make sure we don't end up doing the same thing that's obviously been going on, because there's trees lifting up sidewalks all over Holyoke. So thank you very much.
Sullivan?
Thanks. Who's right now deciding what type or what species of tree to put in?
So I guess it depends on which project you're talking with. So like the Dwight Front and Heritage Street project, we had an engineer, a consulting engineer do the design. They had a landscape architect who selected the species for the trees. When you have private development projects that might have street trees, it's their engineer that decides. Ultimately, it's the city forester who has approval over the tree species that get planted within the public right-of-way. We also have the nursery down on Berkshire Street, where there's trees available for residents of Holyoke to either plant in their backyard or in their private property, or within a tree belt in their front yard.
Okay, so right now, the citizens are able to go grab a tree and plant it on a tree belt in front of their house?
So there, you know, kind of, yeah. I mean, they would work with DPW, with the city forester, and we could make arrangements for them to get a tree.
Well, besides the problem with the sidewalks, the problem I'm seeing is a lot of these are being planted directly under the
utilities.
Yeah. And it's only a matter of time before they're growing up, causing damage in the utilities. It's the placement of them also. And then we're getting not only the added expense of having to trim them around the utilities, but we're getting these trees that are completely deformed looking to allow the wires to go through them. It just seems a little bit short-sighted in where some of these are being located, and I'm just wondering, is there another group also going around town under the auspices of the Conservation Commission planting trees?
DCR is planting trees in the city,
And,
in coordination with the Conservation Commission.
and whose approval as far as the placement and what type of trees and what consideration as far as utilities? Do they consult with anybody, or are they just out doing their own thing?
We had initial conversations with them about the types of trees, when they plant any trees on city property. They talk with us. If it's on Parks property, they talk with Parks and Rec. But then as far as planting on private property, it's a conversation with the homeowner.
All right, so I haven't, is there some way we can find out if there's something else besides, and I hate to throw everybody a curveball on this one, deciduous trees, which is all we're planting around town? But why, earlier today we mentioned arborvitae and stuff like that, things that only grow to 12 or 14 feet.
So the reason we plant deciduous trees is to try to get the canopy and have a shade structure. And you get more shade from those types of trees than an arborvitae.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, for a couple of months, and then you've got the leaves to clean up, which are not
come on.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
when you go with arborvitae, I mean, you're looking at something that leaves all year round, not
Oh.
just for 3 months.
You could plant a cactus and never have to worry about watering it. That'd be, I'm just saying, you can.
So with the work that the Conservation Commission's doing with DCR, it's to try to develop an urban canopy.
So that's had a lot of success. I'll just answer Councilor Sullivan's question, yes, because conservation has been going around planting trees on private property, and you can plant trees on not just residential property, but on commercial property. That's a tree nursery we started in 2013, I think. So I'm pretty proud of that we have our own trees. Now we got to get them out of there. And one thing I'm hearing is that I don't think we have a coordinated effort with the city forester, DPW, and the conservation director. I don't think there's that goes back to what we had in the previous order relative to a plan about vacant lots. And it just you have so many hats to wear, Mike. Whether you can do that or whether you want to start delegating it, but somebody's got to be sort of coordinating some of these things. I don't think it can be just you. I just think that's proven over the course of your tenure here, Mike. You just have way too many hats. So hopefully you can delegate that to Mr. Parent or to somebody who can be the take charge person, so you can do more engineering and less admin. I hope you'll consider that going forward. But certainly conservation's been going around planting trees on private property, because I've been with them doing it. So we're running out of time now because the planting season's over, but we'll be back at it in the spring, and these trees are available to the public at no charge. So I'm pretty sure at least what I've seen, they do a dig safe and they make sure there's no wires above, but if there are wires, they plant an appropriate species that won't grow above a certain height.
Right.
In order to impact the wires. So there is some coordination as far as that goes, but there should be more. I hear from other department heads that there should be a little better procedure at hand. But anyhow, on this order, what would you say, Councilor Murphy, at this point?
Second, comply with.
Okay, motion's been made. Second, that the order has been complied with. Councilor Tallman, you have to go? Okay, thanks, Councilor Tallman.
And
Okay.
as far as the nursery goes, the trees in the nursery are getting mature enough that they need to leave the nursery.
Pretty soon.
So we welcome any calls from the public to come and take a look at the nursery to get a tree.
Is that something you're promoting on the city website, Mike?
No, but we probably should. And it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So we won't go into the other stuff that's promoted on there, but we can maybe think about that as a positive thing to do, because that's really our best conduit, and I think people do lean on our website a lot. And And if you do, if that happens, if you send it to me, I'll put it on my newsletter as well, and I'll get that out immediately. So I'd be happy to, if there's a link right to it, I'd be happy to get that out to the public. And I would do it on a regular basis as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Counselor Murphy,
Yes, sir.
I think we are pretty well, what do we have left, Counselor
We got
Murphy?
item 4 and item 6.
Okay, is that, I haven't checked off my list, I've been typing away, we've tackled 8, we've tackled 9, 10, and 11, so, okay, so so the motion is made a second to suspend rules and
Take
take
up item 4.
items 4 and 6 as a package. On discussion, hearing none on the motion, all in favor? Aye. 4, that the directors of community development, planning, housing authority, meet with the committee to discuss the HUD Section 108 program. Agenda item 6, that the mayor, director of planning, and the director of HHA meet with the committee to seek ways to include the parking lot at the corner of Clemente and Hamilton Streets as part of a planned South Holyoke housing redevelopment around Carlos Vega Park. Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, if we could take up item 6 separately, because the one, I think we can get rid of item 6. I did get a report from Marcus Marrero today that he expects that they're going to formally initiate the HRA process to seek that property and to make some kind of arrangement so that, in fact, the parking lot will become part of the housing revitalization of South Holyoke. And his last comment was that we expect to formally initiate that process within the next 2 months. So I would say that item 6, it is moving forward, and I would hope that by the springtime it will be something, we will have received something from the HRA asking us to accept the parcel as part of that process. So if it's okay, I would just have item 6 complied with the note that we are expecting the HRA to establish the process, I'm going to say by December.
Okay, motion's made and seconded that the order's been complied with, and we are expecting a further update from HRA on the motion. Under discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Item 4?
Item 4.
For us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm going to eventually say we're going to table it, but let me just make I first talked about Section 108 funding with Alicia Zeller from the Community Development Office, who couldn't be here. And there seems to be a good interest. I know Mr. Marrero indicated that it was a likely attractive alternative for development, and it might be a good part in developing underutilized or vacant property, which is one of my goals. I've also talked to Matt Mainville from the Housing Authority about potentially trying to use some of those funds to help provide some of the initial funding for the South Holyoke or Churchill developments. It is, as I understand it, a HUD program that kind of works around the community development program. And I do think we need to get all the parties concerned. I mean, there's all kinds of properties that I think we could use some of those funds. Alicia Zeller did indicate to me via an email, and I'm trying to find that, that we do end up having to come up with a specific plan, and that they're now working on a 5-year consolidation plan, which would be submitted to HUD in May of 2020. I would certainly like to see the city look at applying for these Section 108 funds to start funding some of the redevelopment. And I know, you know, it does take some monies, or it makes us commit some monies from community development to pay off in future years. But certainly the areas that those funds would be used would be areas that are getting community development funding now and would have a significant impact on the quality of life in those neighborhoods if in fact we can use a substantial, and I think I've been told it's somewhere around $5 million that we are eligible for.
Now, whether we would go that full route or go a lesser route, I just think it's important that we get a full accounting of what we can do, how we can do it, and then try to push that. In fact, we do try to apply for some Section 108 and use those funds to develop and improve the quality of life in areas like South Holyoke, Churchill, the old Ward 4, and the Flats. So I think we can do that based on what I'm hearing, but I would, at this point, unless there's other comments, suggest that we table this so that we can get all the parties to come. Certainly, we need to have Alicia, and I would like to have Marcus Marrero. I would like to have Matt Mainville, and potentially other developers come in to talk about developing plans so that we can apply for the funding and hopefully get this process moving so that we start making improvements.
Sounds like a good idea to me. Motion's made and seconded to table, pending we get better participation from department heads. So, Councilor Murphy, I'll encourage you to work with Ryan and to coordinate some schedules for the appropriate parties that you want to see here, perhaps in early 2020. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So on the motion, it's a table. All in favor?
Aye.
The only other thing left is really just the next meeting time, and since there's only 3 of us here, we're going to still give it a shot. And so I'm gonna look to when is Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving is. Boy, does this calendar doesn't say anything what the date is. I'm going to guess it's the 28th. So that week is a non-starter. But obviously Veterans Day is the 11th.
About the 18th?
18th. 18th works for me. Council Sullivan, that works for you?
It's fine.
Okay, so our next meeting will be November 18th at 6 o'clock. All right, so that's the last item, and then motion to adjourn to be in order.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.